Hello and welcome to Instant Transmission, a podcast where we discuss everything Dragon Ball and why rarely used podcast formats are hard to remember. Dragon Ball Z Kai is done and dusted with all 167 episodes in the books. We've got our rankings, you've got time, so settle in as we give our scores and reviews for every saga in the series. I'm your host, Dayton, and once again, I'm joined by my co-host, Todd.
Hi.
And tonight's episode should be pretty laid back as we give our opinions on every saga in Dragon Ball Z Kai. If you've seen our first series review, we'll be attempting to follow that, well, roughly follow that format. But speaking of that format, would you mind giving us a refresher on how this works, Todd?
Yes, absolutely. As a reminder, our scoring goes from 1 to 10. Dayton and I have chosen a score for each arc, as well as ranking Dragon Ball Z Kai as a whole. We will present our individual scores, which we haven't yet revealed to one another, and then come up with the instant transmission score by taking the average of our two individual scores. While dividing the arcs, we used the Dragon Ball Wiki for reference, but we also combined some of the smaller arcs into the larger ones. We basically ended up with 13 story arcs that we felt made the most sense, and we'll be explaining what each arc covers as we go along. So, speaking of those arcs, was there anything else you wanted to cover, Dayton, or should we kind of jump right into it?
No, I think we're ready. And we're going to be starting off with a combined saga right off the bat, which is going to be the Raditz and Vegeta sagas combined into the Saiyan saga. So this covers episodes 1 through 16, and the Saiyan saga in Dragon Ball Z Kai is the first saga that begins with Goku unveiling his young son Gohan during a reunion with his close friends. This is interrupted when the being Raditz arrives, revealing his and Goku's Saiyan origins as brothers. Then he kidnaps Gohan. Piccolo and Goku team up and defeat the evil Saiyan, but at the cost of Goku's life. Goku trains in Otherworld with King Kai in preparation for the next Saiyan threat. And after a vicious battle involving nearly all of the Z fighters fighting against the terrible Nappa and Vegeta, the day is saved, but at a terrible cost. Yamcha, Chaozu, Tien, and Piccolo all give their lives in the battle. And after all the death and destruction dealt by Vegeta and Nappa, Goku allows Vegeta to leave with his life.
Yeah, that's a great little synopsis as we kind of dive into this one. So, this one is a funny one for me because I deeply love the content in the Saiyan arc. And my issue here, though, so I want to also point out specifically, everybody remember that we are reviewing the Kai version of this. We also watched through the dubbed version. But specifically for me, while I really love the content here, the Kai version is terribly paced, in my opinion. Way too fast. Even as somebody who has watched the material and knows the story, there were parts where I was like, wait, what did he say? What just happened? How too much going on in my brain at one time. So that part for me, even though not talking about the content yet, that part is going to play a big part into the rating that I did give it.
For me, and it's a little tough too, because I feel like in almost every saga, the original rendition was kind of fillery all over the place. Things dragged out for really long. Fights were, in some areas, a little awkward because of how long they took and how many times a sequence would repeat and just how long they would stand there yelling at each other. And, Kai does a great job of trimming a lot of that down, but I think at the beginning they were a little overzealous. And the Saiyan saga, I mean, it's moving at breakneck speed. It's really hard to kind of keep up with what's happening with it, and I think that's something we both agree on there. But that aside, and we do have to factor that in because we're reviewing Kai. I think this story is a great kickoff to Dragon Ball Z. And Dragon Ball Z is something that kind of takes what is Goku's kind of more relatable child story and really takes it to kind of the 11th level. I mean, right away, we're introduced to aliens. These aliens claim that Goku is also an alien, and not only that, this guy's your brother. I mean, it's a lot of crazy stuff that's happening, and I think Dragon Ball does a really decent job of making it digestible. Not at the pace that Kai's telling it, but the actual story itself, it's not too out of this world.
Yeah, I agree with you. As far as the content goes here, I really like the introduction of Raditz. I like taking the original Dragon Ball, which was very focused on, of course, on Earth and kind of like this adventure story with magic and other things going on, and almost turning it into a sci-fi now with the introduction of aliens. And we quickly meet Gohan as Goku's son, which is the first time we see him. He was never in the original Dragon Ball. We're left with a lot of questions, which I say that meaning that in a good way for the audience. Like, the audience is like, oh man, there's this alien guy. He's Goku's brother, and so Goku's an alien. What does that mean for him? And like, why does he have this tail? And what are the Saiyans? Like, clearly they're powerful, and we find quickly out that Goku was supposed to be sent to Earth to take it over, basically. And all of that is fascinating, really interesting, like quick world building, and I like it. I think it's good. I just wish that it weren't at breakneck speed in Kai.
I also, it's pretty funny because I think a lot of people were this way. When I first got into Dragon Ball, I started off with Z. And so you don't really understand why this green man, this guy who rides around on a cloud, and all these weird people are all getting together to fight these aliens. But now that I've seen original Dragon Ball, I like the way a lot of that was handled going into Z. I love that Goku still rides around on the Nimbus. Like, he's not flying at this point. It's such a cool little attention to detail.
Yeah, I agree. Especially because you see both Raditz and Piccolo flying around. So you know that people have either varying levels of power or just different skill sets, which is kind of cool. But I mean, that quickly turns into, Goku getting killed technically by Piccolo. Piccolo, being... For those of us who have watched Dragon Ball, we know that Piccolo hates Goku and wants him to die, but Goku gives his life to kill Raditz as well, protecting the Earth and protecting his son and his friends and family. And, that leads into all the Snake Way travel and training with King Kai, which is, all of that is really, really fun. And then, of course, Vegeta and Nappa coming to Earth and coming sooner than expected. Goku doesn't have a chance to get back to Earth until, like you said, Dayton, Tien is dead, Chaozu is dead, Yamcha is dead, and by the time Goku gets there, even Piccolo is dead, which means no more Dragon Balls, which is... I love that detail.
And I will ding this a little bit because I don't think Raditz is the most interesting combatant in Dragon Ball. He doesn't really do anything memorable, but I kind of forgive it because Nappa and Vegeta more than make up for the slack he has. So it almost feels like Raditz is kind of the appetizer, and then Nappa and Vegeta are the main dish.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that. I do like some of the nuances in the Raditz and Goku and Piccolo fight, where Raditz is clearly the stronger of the three of them, but he also has the Scouter. Like, he's using it to read their power levels, and he's like, oh, these guys are like 300 something, and I think his is something like 1100. And however, when Goku and Piccolo charge up like their Kamehameha or the special beam cannon, they get up to like 700-800 and can actually be comparable to him. So it's something that he doesn't realize, that people can kind of change their powers. So I like that nuance of it. We also see that with Vegeta and Nappa as they come to Earth, and they can't sense power levels without the Scouters. And there's so many good elements here. Goku coming in to save like Gohan and Krillin, and having to use this new technique in the Kaioken to stop Nappa from harming them. Vegeta murdering his friend Nappa to kind of like give us this idea of like, oh, he is a bad guy. He just murdered his friend, basically for not being strong enough. And then all of the, I mean, literal and visual cues of Vegeta being this elite Saiyan Prince warrior and completely outclassing Goku, this quite literal low class Saiyan warrior, and Goku still managing to stand up against Vegeta because of all of the hard work that he's put in, that we watched him put in through Dragon Ball and training with King Kai. All of that, getting to root for the underdog is really, really satisfying. Even though Goku really, I mean, he wouldn't have won if not for Gohan and Krillin and Yajirobe in these efforts. So it's really
excellent.
good.
It's also one of the most iconic moments in all of Dragon Ball, if you ask me. The key struggle between Goku and Vegeta. I mean, there are sculptures made of that moment, and I put it in minimum top 3, probably top 2 most iconic moments in all of Dragon Ball.
Easy. Yeah, I would agree. And even learning about we already knew about the Ozaru, the Great Ape transformation from Goku and Dragon Ball, but learning about the origins of it through Vegeta and the Saiyans and everything is super interesting. World building, getting to see the Spirit Bomb used against Vegeta, and then getting to see Goku, like you said earlier with your synopsis, Dayton, basically letting Vegeta go and being like, I want to fight him again later, which ends up being an ongoing character flaw in Goku. All of it's fantastic. I especially love getting to see fights in Dragon Ball where we have group fights, and we'll talk about that more as we go through, but getting to see like Piccolo, Tien, Chaozu, and Gohan and Krillin, all of them fighting against Nappa, and then getting to see Goku fight against Vegeta and basically losing or failing, and then getting to see Gohan, Krillin, and Yajirobe jump in to kind of pick up the slack. It makes the tension. It's felt by the audience, and you're never sure what's going to happen in order to kind of like bring the heroes to a win in this instance. So it's great. I really, really like this saga a lot.
Yeah, and we can't forget the Cybermen either. Like, you're trying to make us feel like these human-looking figures are aliens. Well, why not have them plant some things in the ground that literally spawn aliens that shoot acid out of their heads? It's really good. It's really well put together. I'm ready to give my score on this. How about yourself?
I think I've gabbed about it enough. Yeah, I'm ready to give mine as well.
All right, I'll kick it off. I gave this specifically in Kai, I give this a 9 out of 10. I ding it a point for pacing, but otherwise the story's great. They left in all the best moments, even if some of them were kind of cut short. So the original content was great. Kai does, aside from the bad pacing, a decent enough job with it. I love this arc. It's some of the most iconic moments in all of Dragon Ball. I love it. So I'm just 9 out of 10 for me. How about yourself over there, Todd?
Yeah, and I agree with all your points. I ended up giving it an 8 out of 10. I want to give it more than that, but the pacing really kind of messes it up for me. And again, this is the Kai version. I think one of my irritations is that we almost never get a perfect rendition of the Saiyan arc, because the original was too drawn out with too much filler, and this one is just breakneck pace. But despite that, I think it's still incredible content. One of the, probably Goku and Vegeta, maybe one of the best fights in all of Dragon Ball. So definitely worth at least an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, it's super iconic. It's hard to ding it too much. And gosh, I need to go back and watch the original version to see how slow that is and see if it's definitely, well, it's probably preferable. It's nice having the original to kind of help bolster your viewing experience here.
Yeah, 100%. Just as a recap before we move on to the next arc, that was for Dayton's score, a 9 out of 10 for the Saiyan saga. My score, Todd's score, an 8 out of 10, and that makes the ITDB or instant transmission score an 8.5 out of 10 for the Saiyan saga.
So make sure you listen to that, everybody. Todd doesn't like the Saiyan saga. I do. So just that should be your takeaway.
Yep.
With that out of the way, let's go into the Namek saga, which is there's a Ginyu saga, but it's like 3 or 4 episodes. So we just rolled this into the Namek saga. So that's not getting its own review. But this means that this covers episodes 17 through 35. And this is where our heroes regroup after or during the aftermath of the Saiyan attack. Piccolo is gone. And so with Piccolo gone, the Dragon Balls are gone with him. Utilizing Kami's old ship, the Z Fighters make a plan and head to Namek to undo all the destruction on Earth, with Gohan, Bulma, and Krillin heading into space while Goku recovers. Upon reaching Namek, not only are there powerful evil minions under the command of Lord Frieza infesting the planet, but eventually the familiar face of Vegeta lands as well. And he appears to be fighting for his own self-interests as he begins picking off Frieza's men. Pushed into calling the special forces, the Ginyu Force arrive and our heroes make an uneasy alliance with Vegeta, and they are able to stay alive long enough for Goku to arrive and save the day. The battle is brutal, however, so Goku is sealed inside a rejuvenation chamber to recover. This is a big chunk of events, a huge amount of stuff that happens here. I mean, it is a good amount of episodes, right? Like this is something around 18 episodes. But this just tells you the pacing of Kai at this point. I mean, obviously we just watched all of Kai, and so the Boo stuff really feels like it slows down. And so when I'm reading what happens in this chunk of episodes, it almost blows my mind how fast things were.
Yeah, I agree. Admittedly, I feel like after the Saiyan saga, the production for Kai kind of at least starts to figure out its pacing a little bit better in the Namek saga. It is content rich and dense, but they cut out like the fake Namek whole saga thing. They cut out the whole spaceship like refugees thing. They cut out a lot of stuff. They cut out a lot of stuff with Bulma that is completely unnecessary on Namek. And actually, so
now that I think back, there's only like a few like little snippets of Bulma kind of dorking around on her scooter or whatever that they've left in. There's a lot of filler stuff that's cut out. I mean, and I agree with you. They start getting the pacing down at around this time. Somewhere in the Namek saga, it slows down to the point where it probably should be.
Yeah, it starts to feel a little bit more natural. They started to figure it out a little bit better. It doesn't feel like you're having to rewind to be like, wait, what just happened? How much? What's going on? But it feels like everything that's going on is significant and important. You're not like, it's not dragging.
I will say though that some of the worst recolors happen in this chunk of episodes.
I actually was just thinking too, we didn't really talk about that for the Saiyan saga. That was may have even been one of the other reasons why I dinged it a little bit. Admittedly, I'm so torn on dinging them for like they basically had to go in and redraw some of the panels and animations, and they look like hot garbage sometimes, especially the earlier ones. But I think most of that is because the film that has been sitting around for 40 years is starting to degrade. So I don't know. I'm so torn on whether I want to ding them for that or not.
I definitely, it's a factor for me. I don't give it a ton of weight, but I do weigh it in a little bit just because there had to have been a better way to do it. There had to have been. I mean, you're able to redraw the frame. Why do you have to redraw it to that quality? Like, I don't mind it, say, sticking out because you redrew it, but now it sticks out and it doesn't look good. So, I mean, you're kind of getting the worst of both worlds in that regard.
Yeah, I agree with you. And yeah, I think I did also take it into consideration, both with the Saiyan and the Namek sagas here. But I mean, as far as the content goes for the Namek saga, I love it. I love that we roll directly from the Saiyan saga into the Namek saga. We have character motivation from the last saga, which is I mean, we've got at least 4 characters dead that they want to bring back, and we have no Dragon Balls on Earth. And so they basically are going to Namek to get the Namekian Dragon Balls and wish their friends back, and then run into Space Napoleon Hitler in Frieza. And Frieza wants the Dragon Balls to become immortal. But this basically turns into like a cat and mouse game with actually 3 parties, because you've got Frieza and Frieza's henchmen in like Zarbon and Dodoria, and you have Gohan, Krillin, and Bulma looking for the Dragon Balls. But then you have Vegeta, who was a member of Frieza's forces, but is now kind of working independent of them and trying actually to screw Frieza over and get the Dragon Balls for himself.
And I love Vegeta's kind of like his story arc during all of this, where he's kind of isolating and hunting down all of Frieza's henchmen, kind of going up the hierarchy of power. So he's kind of like, I mean, he's going to the next match and finding a guy and isolating and defeating and doing it again. You're seeing him like get stronger and more badass. And he's kind of this just terror that's waiting out there in the ether. You don't know when he's going to show up and who he's going to fuck up.
Absolutely. And we kind of learn about like the Zenkai boost through this. I mean, partly from Vegeta recovering from the battle with Goku, but Saiyans get stronger every time they come close to death, and Vegeta abuses the shit out of that in this arc as he gets beat up by Zarbon, comes back stronger. And yeah, he basically goes around covertly like grabbing Dragon Balls, hiding Dragon Balls, killing. He kills Dodoria, he kills Zarbon, and he doesn't kill Gohan or Krillin, of course, but certainly beats them up a bit. He does finally end up actually creating forming an alliance with Gohan and Krillin, as we get the Ginyu Force coming in for Frieza to replace Zarbon and Dodoria.
Yeah, and I mean, the Ginyu Force I love them. They're amazing villains. They're so fun. They have so much character. They have fun techniques. All the battles with them are both brutal and fun at the same time. I love the Ginyu Force. So all that is just a pleasure to watch. And then Goku's arrival, right? That shot where he steps out of his spaceship and you see him like getting ready to zoom off and help his friends. For me, that's a very iconic shot too, where you've got him just kind of standing at the ready in front of his ship. I love it. And of course, him arriving unseen. I remember the first time I saw that as a kid, it was just like a yeah moment. And I felt the same way watching it again in Kai. So, I mean, there's a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think to your point too, one of the reasons that buildup is so well done is because when Krillin and Gohan arrive on Namek with Bulma, she does almost nothing. But Krillin and Gohan, particularly, they are way outmatched and outclassed by almost everybody who's on Namek. And so the entire time we're just like, what are they going to do? They can't even beat like Dodoria. Vegeta ends up beating, like we said, Dodoria and Zarbon. But then an even stronger group of fighters comes in the Ginyu Force. And so when Vegeta, Gohan, and Krillin are fighting the Ginyu Force and Goku finally shows up to basically save the day, it is one of the best hero moments that we kind of get to see in media, period. And, he wipes the floor with Jace and Berter, basically wipes the floor with Ginyu, but gets hurt in the process. It's all of it is super well done. The fights are super interesting. Getting to see, like you said, Dayton, getting to see the Ginyu Force with all these different abilities, like freezing time, Captain Ginyu switching bodies, making it such that, like, that is such a cool ability, especially for the fact that Dragon Ball eventually gets to the point where it's basically like, who's got the bigger fucking power level dick that they can swing around. But even though Goku does have the bigger power level, Ginyu is able to basically effectively beat him by stealing his body. So I like when elements like that come into play.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, my only negative I really have is is the recolors. That's all I have. And I'm going to go ahead and spoil it. I give this series a perfect 10. This is a perfect 10 for me.
Wow. Okay. I'm well, I didn't give it quite that high. I gave it an 8. I'm almost kind of reconsidering as we're talking about it. I think that the only reason I think one of the main reasons that I knocked it at all is because it doesn't always have like the emotional weight that we have for like some of the things that are coming up. Um Admittedly though, it's really well done in Kai. It's yeah, I honestly would maybe even reconsider that score.
I love it because it's, I mean, this is like the middle chunk of a story right here. And so what it's doing is it's setting the table for what's going to happen in the future. Um but the whole time the table's being set, we've got multiple parties all working together. So there's multiple groups, and that's something that doesn't really happen in Dragon Ball very often, and it's implemented super well here. You have stakes because you have Earth doesn't have Dragon Balls, and you need to get your hands on these Dragon Balls. Otherwise, all your friends stay dead, and if you don't stay hidden, then you'll be found and killed because it's not Goku on the planet at the beginning of this. It's Krillin and Gohan, who could die. Like, these are characters that the Dragon Ball universe could very easily kill because they could just wish them back later, right? And so following them is just, I mean, it's so stressful when you're following these characters as they're covertly moving around and they're doing all these, little hiding techniques, whether it's Krillin throwing up the solar flare and running away, lowering their power levels. I think there are scenes where they're like jumping like from dirt patch to dirt patch across the water because they're trying to keep their power levels lower, but it's slowing them down so much that it's like also a risk because they're not getting to where they need to go quick enough. Everything with Vegeta through this entire chunk of episodes is just good. He is handled perfectly. I love how he's vindictive, like selfish, kind of piece of shit throughout all of this, and it fits his personality perfectly. He is just out for Vegeta, and he's also out to settle a few scores during all of this. The Ginyu Force, some of my favorite characters, so fun to watch. I can't think of anything I would do to improve anything that happened in here. So I have to give it a perfect score. It's probably my favorite chunk of episodes in all of Dragon Ball to watch.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm going to make this weird, but I'm going to on the fly adjust mine because as I'm trying to think on reasons to even knock this one, I'm struggling. I'm going to adjust my score up to a 9 here. I think honestly, the only things that I would even really think to knock this for at this point, and this is starting to get nitpicky, is I think they did get the pacing a little bit better in Kai. I think it still struggles a little bit with pacing at the beginning. If you go back and listen to the other episodes of our podcast, I have harped on this point throughout most of Kai, and it is the music. I still don't like most of the music that was used, especially in some of these earlier arcs. And even in like moments where I'm like, oh, this could be a really cool moment for music, it's usually not done well. So I think that's probably going to be the biggest point that I ding it for. But I agree with everything that you said about the arc and the story, Dayton. The characters are incredible. It's very interesting seeing just characters with different abilities, seeing the minions of Frieza, who we don't even get to see anything from Frieza through this part of the arc yet. And we know that he's still kind of on the table as like the strongest. So all of that tension throughout is really, really good.
I also think that the Kai version is clearly better than the original run.
I agree.
And so I have to rank it above that. Because I mean, you're right. They cut out so much filler in all of this, all the fake Namek. I mean, there were many more episodes of Goku kind of going through the same kind of training on his spaceship, but it's repetitive training. It's not really I think there's a whole episode where he accidentally bumps the gravity up too high, and I'm kind of glad that that got cut out.
At least a whole episode.
So
But
yeah, you want to give us a repeat of our scores then?
yeah, because I made it even more difficult by changing mine. That makes it Dayton's score for the Namek Saga is a 10. Todd's score, my score for the Namek Saga is a 9. So that makes the instant transmission score for the Namek Saga a 9.5, and deservedly so. I think you kind of swayed my opinion on that one there, Dayton.
I'm glad I did. I love that chunk of episodes, and
It's very good.
it's like I said, it's probably my favorite. There are moments, like individual moments in Dragon Ball, that probably stand out more than any of the individual moments in that. But that whole stretch, the whole story all put together in the middle of something, I don't know. I love it. But anyway, off to the Frieza saga, which is episodes 36 through 54. The Namekian Dragon Balls are collected, but we find out that this dragon can only resurrect one person at a time. So Piccolo is wished back. To Namek just before the Grand Elder dies. So now the Namekian Dragon Balls are no more. But hey, at least we got the Earth Dragon Balls back, right? This does enrage Frieza, though, who was just denied his wish for immortality, and decides to take out his frustration on our Z Fighters and begins opening up a can of whoop ass on them. After unveiling several power-boosting transformations, our heroes seem hopelessly overwhelmed until Goku finishes recovering and arrives back on scene. Despite his strength, even Goku appears overwhelmed in the face of the tyrant lord of the universe. Seeing his friend Krillin killed before his eyes, Goku snaps, and the overflowing rage causes the Super Saiyan transformation. Through some clever wishing loopholes, everyone on Namek is revived and teleported to Earth except for Goku and Frieza. And after a very long 5 minutes, Goku lays low the tyrant just before the planet erupts in a fiery explosion.
Yeah, so this is a big one. This is, I think that I'll say the pacing at this point for Kai, this is maybe the best that the pacing gets.
I agree.
And it continues to be pretty good past this, but they really got their stride at this point. If I remember correctly, the art corrections start to become less and less at this point, and I mean, this is iconic. This is iconic throughout all of anime and manga, is the Super Saiyan transformation. And if we want to talk about cutting things down and filler, like the 5-minute explosion for Namek and that getting cut down, it's still, I mean, as far as episode length, it's still vastly more than 5 minutes. But I think that they keep the exact right amount of content for the fight between Super Saiyan Goku and Frieza. I mean, I love Frieza as a bad guy. He's probably my favorite Dragon Ball villain, period.
That's a big point for me is Frieza is, I mean, arguably my favorite villain in all of Dragon Ball. I mean, I'd have to go through and think about that, but I feel that way right now. And I mean, the way that Frieza's written, right? Frieza is this tyrant of the universe, this evil lord, and everything matches that when right from the way that he talks, the way he kind of like he uses very, I don't know, elegant language, but is so demeaning to everyone around him. Like just terrible. But he's very, you know, clever about the way he describes how he's better than everyone around him. That condescending tone that he has constantly. And even kind of the move set, I guess, that Frieza has is perfect. He has these, you know, little pinpoint laser beams that are used for like torturing people. And then you have a planet destroying blast when you're just done with a race. And we even see a couple kind of off the wall techniques, like the one where Goku is encapsulated and kicked around and he's defenseless. I'm assuming that's another torture technique. I mean, all of it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Yeah, I mean, you're like, I love the start of the Namek arc because you start afraid of Frieza as the audience, even because of how he's described and his power, and how he's described as like the most powerful creature in the universe. And he very much shows that as he puts Goku in his place before Goku turns Super Saiyan, and, you know, not even using his full power against Goku. I mean, even getting hit with the spirit bomb and still coming back largely unscathed. Like, he's terrifying. He's super interesting. We're made to hate him with like his blatant racism of like, you filthy monkeys and all this other stuff. He's just an incredibly well written villain, with a phenomenal climax with the Super Saiyan transformation that was built up with the sometimes comical dialogue from Vegeta throughout, and finally seeing Goku, you know, like we said from the Saiyan arc, the underdog working hard to achieve this legendary transformation, and then defeating the tyrant that is Frieza. And this is an iconic story. I mean, it is very satisfying, great writing, great characters, and even like the scene of Vegeta when he's on death's door and is crying, asking Goku to defeat Frieza. Incredible characterization. All of it is fantastic. I really enjoy this arc.
Yeah, and I don't remember feeling like I missed anything with Kai's cut down version. It felt like all the relevant content was there. Most of the filler was cut out, and everything made sense. And, you know, it's really cool being able to watch this through again, with Schemel's voice acting up to the point where it is now, because when he's snapping, when he's overflowing with rage, just the emotion that he's able to get with the experience he has now is just, it's on a whole different level. I love the Kai rendition of the Frieza saga.
And that's a great point that we haven't really touched much on, is the updated voice acting in the dub version here is, I mean, even the dialogue that's written out is much less awkward. Dayton, I think you pointed out to me a few instances in the old Funimation dub that were very awkward, but these deliveries feel more natural from the voice actors who now have 20 years of voicing these characters underneath their belt or something along those lines. It is, I mean, even the voices like Chris Sabat as Vegeta or Piccolo sound way, way more natural. So yeah, I could gush about this one for forever, so we'll have to cut me short here, but I think this one is very, very well done.
Well, this probably isn't going to surprise too many people, but I'm going to give the Frieza saga another 10 out of 10.
And this time, Dayton and I matched on this one, where I also gave this one a 10 out of 10. I don't have anything to ding it for, honestly. Like, I could maybe get real nitpicky about some of the music used here, but even that wasn't enough to deter me from giving this a 10. It is just so good.
Yeah, I mean, this is a definite 10 out of 10, because Kai took basically the problems I had with the original and fixed them. And so I think the Kai version of the Frieza saga is strictly just a better experience. And I mean, you're right. I could probably find a couple nitpicks, right? There's probably a couple things that I could look at and be like, well, this could be a little better. But I mean, even if you combine all those nitpicks, is it enough for me to take a point off? Like, this has to be some of the best Dragon Ball content you can consume, full stop.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So I'm going to give a recap of our scores before I want to go on gushing about this even longer. But the Frieza saga, I think, well, is going to be, at least for Dragon Ball Z Kai, is our first of Dayton giving it a 10 out of 10, Todd, myself, giving it a 10 out of 10, making the instant transmission score a full 10 out of 10, which is pretty impressive.
I think this is gonna be the start of things being a little less predictable for us because we're gonna have a lot of diverging opinions from here on out.
I have a feeling you're going to be you're very correct about that.
Because we kick off the diversion with the Android saga, which we're rolling the Trunks saga into it. So this covers episodes 55 through 67. And this is a year after Goku defeats Frieza. Frieza arrives on Earth. Does that sound right? I got the notes down right here.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. But is not greeted by Goku or any of the other Z fighters. He's greeted by the time traveling son of Vegeta. Man, that made me laugh the way I wrote that. The Z fighters are then warned about a powerful pair of androids who will appear in the future and destroy everyone on Earth. Also, that Goku will have a heart disease that should kill him, but won't since he has a future cure. Trunks leaves, the Z fighters train, androids 19 and 20 appear, and then Goku's heart disease kick in, so he's bedridden. Trunks comes back to our timeline and notices that these androids are different from the ones in his timeline. And after defeating these two androids, we are shown the true threat in the forms of android 17 and 18. To make things even weirder, an old time machine that's the spitting image of Trunks is now discovered.
So this one's going to be interesting. I mean, Trunks, especially Trunks' appearance when I was probably a teenager, maybe a preteen, was one of my favorite, like, just character introductions, period, in anime and media. So I mean, he's got a fucking sword, man. He's a badass. But getting to see him show up and kill Frieza and Frieza's father with very little effort, turning into a Super Saiyan of all things, like we've talked about in the past, using Frieza as a measuring stick for like our new character and for our characters moving forward. It's a great introduction. It's a great way to start off a new arc. It has ties to our previous arc with Frieza, and then kind of like quickly pushes us into the new narrative as Goku returns with instant transmission and they learn about the androids and, you know, this future timeline. I mean, this is going to be a tough one because also in the background, like as we meet androids 20 and 19 and 20 and then move to 17 and 18, like I already know, and I think you know, Dayton, that there were Akira Toriyama's editors kind of like hands in the background playing with things. It's hard for me not to think about that when I'm thinking about rating this arc.
Yeah, and I mean, I am gonna ding it for just some general things that I kind of dislike about this. One is I don't like the setting that we're now taking place in, because we just went off to a badass like other world and we're introduced to other races and the tyrant of the universe and all this cool stuff that's going on. And then we come back to Earth and we're dealing with some robots, and it feels like a step backwards from kind of the mystery and the myth that's kind of woven into the universe and setting of Dragon Ball. And because I mean, even in the original Dragon Ball, you're going through like mushroom forests and all these crazy places as you're traveling, and this feels just like such a bog standard environment. It's such a just boring place for things to happen. Like we fight in like a desert, and then we fight like in some woods, and I don't like the setting, and I don't think the androids are kind of interesting, but they feel like just kind of humans with extra steps, really. But I guess you could say the same thing about Saiyans, but I don't know. So I can't continuously ding the series for that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to put those dings here so that way I can get it out of the way, because this is where they chose the setting.
That's fair. I want to add a few things to what you said about that, because again, I think you and I are going to have slightly different opinions about this one, which is totally is why this is interesting. But I actually do like I get what you mean about the setting kind of being bland and kind of being a step backwards. I do like that this one kind of, at least, well, after Trunks leaves and after the 3-year time skip, as we meet the androids, I actually really like that the androids are in a city and attacking a city, because we don't really get to see that very often. It does quickly move out of the city, unfortunately. But also the fact that our heroes, especially having gone through the previous arc where our heroes, their advantage was being able to sense energy, and their enemies had to use devices, scouters, to be able to do that and do it less well than our heroes. That actually becomes a detriment to them in this case, where our heroes are relying on sensing energy and they can't. And I like that kind of like narrative element of the androids, where it's harder to track them, it's harder to like figure out who they are at first, which creates some of this extra tension happening in the beginning. I do agree though that the androids themselves, especially like, I mean, really even 17 and 18 might even be the worst offenders, but they're a little bit bland. I like though that we're getting a tie back to the Red Ribbon Army from the original Dragon Ball, and that specifically there is a grudge being held on Goku by one of the doctors or scientists who worked with the Red Ribbon Army. So that's a good tie back and a good consequence for our heroes' actions, which we don't get very often in Dragon Ball.
Yeah, I do agree with a number of those points. And the the androids do have some unique things that they do, like you said, that you can't sense their power. I like that. I actually like that 19 and 20 were able to sap the energy out of their opponents. That was kind of a cool dynamic where you didn't actually want them to grasp onto you. And I guess kind of going along with that, I love the scene where Vegeta grabs onto, I think it was 19, and just rips his arms like right off of his body after placing his feet on his literal face. It's so fun. So there are a couple cool moments in this. And we've got an interesting opponent as far as, sensing them and fighting them. But for me, though, this just feels like a strict step back from, say, like the Ginyu Force or something like that. This isn't as fun for me. It is interesting, you're right, but I don't think it's as fun.
Yeah, I can't really argue with that. It is a little bit more bland. Like the Ginyu Force were super interesting.
It is a setting the table kind of episode, though, right? It's kind of, Trunks is explaining to you what the bad guys are, and everyone starts training, and Goku's getting ready to have a heart disease, and everything's kind of being put into motion at this point. I also absolutely love the scene when Trunks shows up and he's like, "Hey, dog, these aren't the androids I was talking about." Like, that's kind of a bombshell moment when you first see it.
It's a cool twist. I mean, again, that is partly as a result of Toriyama's editors and everything, but I mean, well, admittedly, we'll kind of get into it, but the editors probably made this the entire story for the androids much better overall in the end anyway. But yeah, I mean, there's just some weird things going on here, and I think I agree with you there too. Like Android 16, we hadn't really brought him up yet, but he is an addition to the androids, like Android 17 and 18, that was not in Trunks's timeline. And Dr. Gero says he's not functional or shouldn't be awakened. I think there's ways that we can kind of explain that away, but it also still felt a little bit weird, like that nothing ever really came of that. Like, why did you not want him to be awakened? So there are some weird elements going on here. I mean, I like Vegeta transforming into Super Saiyan. Some people might not like the fact that he basically achieved it off screen, and I can kind of agree with that. There's just a lot of stuff that's like, okay, these are fun, but yeah, it's setting something up, and there's not like a lot of wow in your face cool moments.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm gonna get to my score. And I was honestly not sure where to score this one, because there's a lot of things I like. There's also a lot of things that I kind of ding it for. So I had to kind of zoom out a little bit and go, all right, was I entertained? Did this chunk of episodes at least entertain me? Because that's kind of the core value of everything. You can have all the other stuff in place, but if I'm not like at least entertained by what's going on, then I don't want to watch it. And to be honest, it kind of at least passed the sniff test for that. I'm at least entertained by what's going on. And for all of its flaws, it does a lot of fun things. There's a lot of, cool little fights and things happening. I'm going to give it, and mind you, you can go ahead and put an asterisk next to this because I could probably give it a point lower. I'm just being generous because I like Dragon Ball. So I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10.
I mean, I think I feel a lot of the same things that you do too, Dayton. I will say just right off the bat, I also gave it a 7 out of 10. I almost gave it a 6. I was really on the fence with this one too. It's like, I'm so torn because there's nothing in this one that I'm like, man, that was awesome. Like there's, you mentioned Vegeta like squatting on 19's face, maybe the coolest moment in the whole thing, or Trunks like cutting Frieza in half. But there's not a lot in here that's like really blows me away by the writing or the characters or the action. Like it's all good, but it's not incredible. And then there's just a few things that are like kind of weird and awkward, like the whole thing was 16, and then there being multiple sets of androids.
But there's nothing that like ruins it though, right? Like you don't.
Yeah.
There's no big high moment, but there's no big low moment either, and everything is fine. Like nothing's terrible. I didn't know how to score this one, and so I was just like, all right, well, is it like, was I bored? No. Was I super entertained? Not really. It was like, it's a fine set of episodes, I guess. Like it does its job at the very least.
Let me say this before we move on, is when I was thinking about scoring this, I was also thinking about the other ones that we've reviewed so far, like Super and Dragon Ball. And I still think that this arc is way better than most of the stuff in Super.
I agree with that. But also, actually, I think we've talked about this quite a bit off camera, where after going through original Dragon Ball and now Kai, I feel less confident about the ratings I gave Super. Like, I almost want to go back and update that, but I mean, they're in the books at this point. I got to live with it.
It's tricky. I think I tried to give Super kind of low ratings because I knew what was coming next. But yeah, maybe I would even still go and revise that. But without getting too much into the weeds with that, our scores for the Android Saga. Dayton gave it a 7 out of 10. Todd, myself, gave it a 7 out of 10, which makes the instant transmission score a full 7 out of 10 for what is kind of a weirdly average, hard to rate arc.
Which is weird because, you would figure 5 out of 10 would be average, but I mean, Dragon Ball varies all over the place, man. Like there's a lot of filler episodes that sometimes you're forced to watch, and it just comes down to sometimes, yeah, I was at least entertained, so 7.
Same. Yeah. I still enjoyed watching it, so I can't say that I would give it less than that, honestly.
But that moves us on to the Imperfect Cell Saga, which we're rolling in the Perfect Cell Saga into it because it felt like the same story arc, and both were like, 7-ish episodes. So now we're going to be covering episodes 68 through 82. A mysterious new threat has appeared, leaving entire cities empty without a trace. Piccolo investigates and finds the gangly green form of Imperfect Cell creeping around, sucking people up, and manages to get him to explain his plan to suck up the other 2 androids to achieve his perfect form. Cell escapes, hiding his energy to make him undetectable, and continues his scheming. Goku, Gohan, Vegeta, and Trunks all begin to utilize the hyperbolic time chamber. Piccolo fights Android 17, but Cell interrupts the match, sucking down the android and then transforming. Tien holds off the now power-boosted Cell so 18 can escape. Vegeta then battles the semi-perfect Cell and absolutely mops the floor with him. Unimpressed, Vegeta offers Cell the opportunity to achieve his perfect state. Vegeta and Trunks are now no match for the perfect state Cell, but after learning that Goku is training, Cell offers the Z Fighters 10 days to prepare for a tournament that he will host to decide the fate of the world. He will call this tournament the Cell Games.
Hell yeah. So, this one's going to get interesting. This basically covers, the introduction of Imperfect Cell all the way to Cell becoming perfect and introducing the Cell Games, like you kind of gave us the summary for, Dayton. But I talked about this when we covered these episodes. I'm so torn on Cell's introduction because I really, really like what they tried to do with it. I like the horror sort of theme that they have going on. I don't like that Cell is basically introduced and then is no match for Piccolo. Like, he's not really a threat. I like that he fucking drinks people. I like his character design. I like how creepy he is, but all of that is kind of undermined for me by the fact that he just gets his ass whooped in the very first fight.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I'm willing to forgive it. I think probably a little bit more than you are, just because it's really showing where Cell's starting from, how weak he currently is. And you almost kind of don't believe that this perfect form is really going to be anything. It almost seems like a pipe dream or something that doesn't matter. And it's not above Toriyama to set up long-lasting jokes like this. So there is some degree of, for the first time seeing this, you might not know what the hell this thing is or if it even really matters. The introduction of Cell, that first kind of scene where the music is completely just gone, and you're following Piccolo, who's walking through these empty streets with just piles of clothes laying around. It's really eerie. So I actually do like kind of our first encounter with Cell when we get the reveal, because they properly build it up to be this very creepy, almost alien kind of moment. So I do like that. I do agree that I wish Cell was a little bit more impactful when you meet him. Like, you could see how he could be a threat, but Piccolo's not as strong as, 2 or 3 of the other Z fighters, and Piccolo's mopping the floor with this guy. So what the hell do you have to worry about? I agree there. I like that Tien does a thing. That's pretty cool in here.
Yeah. Kind of moving through where, like, Cell disappears. He gets introduced, disappears for a while, and we kind of get more of the androids, like 16, 17, and 18, tracking down Goku, because Goku's, in bed with a heart disease, and then they eventually get to Kame House, and we have kind of the fight with Piccolo and 17, which is an incredible fight, by the way.
It's a fun fight. I give it full marks on just how fun that fight, the way that they're just like trading blow after blow, just absolutely decking each other in like the guts and stomach. There's even a few moments where I think they animated some ground slams and things like that really well.
Absolutely. And getting Piccolo introduces 2 new techniques with the Hell Zone grenade and the other one, the flash grenade or whatever it's called. But yeah, that one's fun. Cell comes in after drinking thousands, millions of people, and is now, way stronger than Piccolo and 17. And the only person who can stop him is 16, which also is a brief but really cool fight. And then, of course, Cell absorbs 17 at that point, getting his semi-perfect form, and kind of moving us to the point that you're talking about, Dayton, with Tien actually coming in and being relevant, probably for the first time since fighting Nappa, where he was barely relevant. And stopping Cell from getting his perfect form and absorbing 18. And man, we already covered at least 2 really cool fights and at least 2 or 3 really cool moments, and we haven't even gotten to like the tail end of this arc, so it's doing pretty well so far.
One knock I will give against this is this really introduces the hyperbolic time chamber as a training tool for Z fighters. I don't like the hyperbolic time chamber, and I don't like it for a few reasons. One is I prefer like an actual like master student dynamic with like a training regiment. I kind of like my training to be a little bit more, you know, substantive. Whereas the hyperbolic time chamber, I don't like how it gets utilized going forward, and I kind of don't really like how it's even utilized in in all the cell stuff either. So I have mixed feelings about it. It's not my favorite thing. And also that kind of goes in line with, Trunks is a time traveler. I typically hate time travel and any medium I encounter it in any medium is consumed. And it's kind of these things that are starting to stack on top of each other at this point for me, where it's just like, all right, we've got time traveling and the room of spirit and time and all this other crap happening. And I don't know. I feel like we're missing some of the core Dragon Ball elements somewhere in here. Like, I feel like I'm missing out a little bit.
Those are definitely some fair points. I get what you mean about like the hyperbolic time chamber. There's no, teacher or anything. I'm not as bothered by its use in the Cell saga here, partly because it at least has limitations. Like you can only be in there for 2 days, which is the equivalent of 2 years.
The
Period.
thing that you're alluding to is probably why I automatically get more distaste than I probably normally would have had. So I think I agree with you with right now it's not too bad, but I kind of know where it eventually goes. So I'm like, ugh, I just have a bad taste with that thing at this point.
I get it, and I agree. I think in the long term, because eventually the limitations basically just get removed. I think it works fine as a tool in the Cell arc. Like it gives a way for our Z fighters and the Saiyans to catch back up and to create tension. So it's not my favorite tool by any means for sure, but it gets the job done, I guess. And that kind of like turns into, like you said in the synopsis, where, Trunks and Vegeta finish their training in the time chamber. They go beat the snot out of semi-perfect Cell, kind of stop him from getting 18 and getting perfect for a minute until Cell basically says, hey, Vegeta, I would whoop your ass if I were perfect. And Vegeta fully biting hard on that bait. And that gives us the beautiful jaw-lined perfect Cell towards the end of this arc.
So that is probably my favorite moment in these chunks of episodes. Is Vegeta letting Cell achieve that perfect form, because he as a Saiyan, as a competitive, fighter, he can't live without knowing what this perfect form is, right? It would be against his core being to defeat Cell without knowing, well, was there actually a fight there? It is, I mean, it's such a trope in Dragon Ball, right? To let the other guy power up, to let the other guy do whatever they want. This is literally that, and its highest level of Dragon Ball tropeness, where Vegeta said, hey, go absorb that person so that way you're a better fight for me. And I mean, to say the least, it doesn't disappoint. This new perfect Cell form it's more than a match for Vegeta. It's more than a match for Trunks too. And this is where Cell gives them the 10 days to prepare for the Cell games. And I don't know, as far as letting this be a cliffhanging moment, I do kind of dig it, because it's Cell who's been striving for perfection, giving everyone like an opportunity to test themselves against it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I like that we get to see, I mean, not that there are vast changes, but when Vegeta and Trunks come out of the hyperbolic time chamber, we've got both of them in, I think what's referred to as Super Saiyan Grade 2, what a lot of people call Super Vegeta, where he's just fucking jacked. But even beyond that, getting to see Trunks go into Super Saiyan Grade 3, which is kind of like the the massive hulked out form where he almost looks like Broly, but neither one of those is a match for perfect form Cell. And yeah, I mean now Cell really feels like a threat. I mean, both Trunks and Vegeta spent a year training in the hyperbolic time chamber and still are no match for him. And we're just kind of waiting on Goku and Gohan to come out of the hyperbolic time chamber at this point to see. I mean, to see basically to see if Goku can save the day. That's kind of like the normal formula for Dragon Ball at this point, right?
Yeah, and I do kind of enjoy that. I think Trunks had mentioned something along the lines of Vegeta basically didn't work with him hardly at all the entire time they were in their training. That like they didn't really teach each other anything. They just kind of fought.
Yeah, there are some funny details about that stuff. I mean, I like a lot about this arc. I like Cell. I like his introduction minus, him being undermined by not being powerful. I like that he's tied into the other androids. Like there's incentive for him to kind of like hunt them down and seek them out. Him just murdering people is scary, and the fact that he's kind of like a I don't know, a predator and a wild animal that the Z fighters can't seem to track down and solve that problem. There's lots of tension because, I mean, the only reason Piccolo's even able to fight the androids or Cell at all is because he absorbs Kami, which, that whole situation of like they used to be one being and Piccolo was the evil version, and now Kami has to become part of Piccolo again. There's some character stuff going on there. And as to create tension per usual, Goku is out of commission. There's a lot of good here. There's some really fun fights. And getting to see Vegeta, I mean, we get to see Vegeta's final flash. We get to see Vegeta both be like so full of himself and whoop semi-perfect Cell's ass, and then completely get his comeuppance for being an egotistical asshole. I mean, all of that is fantastic. I mean, there's a lot of good here, but there are definitely some problems.
Yeah, and just to get into it, I kind of felt very similar about this chunk of episodes as I did the previous, where there's nothing that breaks it for me, but there's also nothing that got me like super hyped. So I'm gonna give this one another 7 out of 10.
I went a little bit higher for this one. I gave it an 8 out of 10. I think part of that is this one just has more, like, for me, more moments that I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like the fight between Piccolo and 17 was really cool. 16 and Cell was really cool. Even, I mean, again, Vegeta's final flash and watching Vegeta and Trunks fight semi-perfect Cell. Like, there's just more to me that it feels very, very satisfying, especially from like a Dragon Ball Z perspective.
Yeah, I agree with you there. There are definitely some more like iconic moments that you can kind of think of in this chunk of episodes. I guess where I ding it the other way is I mean, it feels like we're really starting to focus down on just like a couple characters at this point, where we're starting to squeeze out all the side characters and they're becoming less relevant. And I mean, I like Cell once he achieves his perfect form. I think that's when his personality really starts to blossom and you really start to like get into his villainous side, which we're going to get into soon. But we're missing that personality of the villain, because when Cell's in his imperfect forms, he's a very flawed villain, which kind of works with his character as he's kind of scavenging around and, lurking in the shadows. But I don't know. Now that he's in the limelight, I really want him to get to that perfect form, because I think that's where he really shines.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I agree with most of what you have to say about that too. This arc is not without its problems. sometimes it feels weird that we're focused on like one group and not another. I mean, there's like I had mentioned before, where Cell kind of gets introduced and then just fucks off and disappears for a
Just
while.
disappears. He's like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, which makes sense for certain reasons, but it also feels a little strange. And like you said, Dayton, to your point, I mean, Namek is the tail end of like, I'll say the tail end of the Frieza arc is like, in my opinion, the start of where we see the many of the characters become irrelevant. And that really starts to show more and more throughout the Cell arc, and then even beyond that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that pretty much sums it up. I don't have any big problems with it. I just have a collection of smaller problems that all kind of add up.
Yeah, I feel the same. I just gave it a little bit more than the Android Saga. But for our scores, that ends up making it Dayton giving the Imperfect Cell Saga a 7 out of 10. Todd, myself, giving it an 8 out of 10. And that makes our instant transmission score for the Imperfect Cell Saga a 7.5 out of 10.
All right. Then that leads us into the Cell Game Saga, which cover episodes 83 through 98. Cell makes its announcement to the world, and our Z Fighters begin to prepare utilizing the hyperbolic time chamber some more, as well as some R&R if you're Goku and Gohan. Arriving at the tournament, Goku steps forward to battle first, but eventually admits defeat after an explosive battle. Goku sends his son Gohan in next and declares that he'll be the one who defeats this dastardly Cell. This plan goes poorly, though, as Gohan gets brutalized and nearly all of his friends die. Pushed to his limits, Gohan unlocks a level beyond Super Saiyan. Despite completely overpowering Cell, the young boy's rage blinds him, and Goku is forced to give his life to save the planet. Wounded and overpowered, Gohan is entangled in a massive ki struggle against Cell, but thanks to the help of his friends and encouragement from his late father, Gohan overpowers the monster and saves the planet.
I'm excited to hear your take on this one. This is like, I mean, I think for a lot of the fan base, like the Dragon Ball fan base as a whole, this might be the pinnacle of Dragon Ball. And it, for me, it's hard to argue that, honestly. Like, and maybe that's some of my strong opinions about Gohan getting to be in the limelight, Gohan turning Super Saiyan 2, and, being the one to beat the bad guy instead of Goku. And, Goku sacrificing himself, Goku, like pushing his son to be the best that he can be. There's a lot that I really like about the story for this one.
I think this ending is probably one of the most emotional endings to any major arc in Dragon Ball. Just the emotional journey that you go through with Gohan, where he's pushed into a corner and forced to fight even though he doesn't want to, and he's kind of dealing with being in the shadow of his father, and then dealing with the passing of his father, and it's his own fault. I mean, it's crazy. This is probably one of the, I guess, the hardest hitting, deepest final battles between any two characters in the Dragon Ball series. Like, this is one of those ones where, I mean, like, even though Gohan wins the day at the end, like, it's still very tragic. Like, your heart still kind of bleeds a little bit, because they do a good job of really conveying Gohan's emotions, his feelings, and his differences to Goku to you. And I mean, it is interesting because Goku's always looking for that fight, right? Like, it's fun to him and he loves it. But Gohan's protecting his friends. He has a completely different motivational mindset. His emotions are all wired up differently than his father's. And I mean, I don't know. It's a great journey to follow. And like I said earlier, this is also where Cell's villainous side comes into full form, and you really start appreciating him as a character. I love how egotistical he is. I love how he's talking about this whole time about how he's going to be the perfect creation, the strongest being in the universe. And now that he's accomplished that, the ego is on full display here. And you understand his motives as a villain too, right? And I mean, I don't know. There's so much emotion behind a lot that happens in this. And there's only a couple of times in Dragon Ball I can think of where I felt as emotionally invested as I was in this battle right here. Um, I mean, oddly enough, I felt that way in the original Dragon Ball during that third martial arts tournament that Goku had entered. I felt emotionally invested in Goku's success there. But this one's different because this one's much more tragic. So it's pulling on like my heartstrings in a different way. So it's hard to compare. I don't know if anything else really does it.
It's tough. Yeah, I very much agree. I mean, there's something to be said too for people people in the West, people from like an American audience in particular, like that you and I know from watching Dragon Ball Z on Toonami, where we were probably, you know, somewhere along the lines of like 10 to 14 years old, and we're watching Gohan. Like we get to start Dragon Ball Z with Gohan, watch him, you know, as a young boy kind of quickly have to grow up and quickly have to learn how to fight and quickly, I mean, just thrown into these situations where he's way out of his depth, but he still has to try to do his best and grow as a person, as a fighter, and getting to see that kind of come to its full culmination where he's here 11, 12 years old and is pitted against at the moment, the most powerful creature to defend the entire planet, to, you know, defend his friends, defend his family, and doing so successfully. I mean, succeeding. I mean, he definitely needed some encouragement from his father and his friends, but I guess the connection here that I'm trying to point out is that being a young kid and watching that story and that growth in Gohan, it's hard not to connect to him and not to feel just very deeply what Gohan is feeling in those situations. And I think that's one of the reasons, especially why a Western audience really, really loves this story with Gohan. I mean, like you said, Cell is an incredible villain. It's nice to see his ego not only in his perfection, but also he's got elements of Frieza and Goku and Vegeta in him. And he loves that combat as well and challenging himself and getting to see, I mean, you know, the fight between Goku and Cell, we haven't even really touched on, which is super, super cool with like the instant transmission Kamehameha. And then Cell really pushing Gohan to his limit with the Cell Juniors and physically threatening his friends and family with, I mean, pain, physical harm, and death. And, you know, that kind of leads Gohan to his breaking point. And, you know, Gohan protecting Vegeta there's so many things, so many layers there, so many things to be said about that. And then the one arm Kamehameha is incredible, iconic, amazing key blast clash. And, you know, Vegeta being the one to kind of like step up and help Gohan finish the job with Goku, just the spirit of Goku behind Gohan all the way. And I think something you alluded to, Dayton, where this would almost be a perfect ending or send off for not only Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and the story as a whole, but for the character of Goku, to let Gohan take that lead as the main character.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, Gohan has had such a rough journey up to this point. Like Goku throughout his fighting career was always, he kind of had like the perfect case scenario where he was always given the next bad guy that he needed to fight. He went from, you know, Pilaf to the Power Tower, I don't remember what it was called, to just all these different villains that kind of went up the scale of power that he needed to go at his own rate. Gohan was thrown into the deep end, man. Gohan's been just trying to stay alive in almost every battle he's been in. throughout his young life up till this point. I mean, the Saiyans were far beyond his level, and he wasn't ready to fight them. And then on Namek, there were super powered people flying everywhere, and he wasn't ready to fight them. And he was kind of alone during all of that for big chunks of it. And now he's thrown into the middle of it with a planet destroying monster with all of his friends and family on the line, and then he watches his own actions cause his dad to die. I mean, Gohan's had a very tragic journey to this point, whereas Goku more or less is kind of, I mean, I'd hate to say it, but Goku's kind of had, kitty or kid gloves compared to Gohan's journey to this point.
Yeah, admittedly. And you kind of touched on it, but we barely talked about the fact that this whole situation with Gohan was facilitated by his father, Goku, who basically has been the person to save the planet on multiple occasions at this point, but decided that his son needed to be the one to do it, not only because he saw what kind of hidden power his son had within him, but also thinking on what is the fate of the earth going to look like if I'm not around to protect it. I need to make sure that somebody else can do so, and I think my son would be the perfect person to do that. But you kind of touched on this part, Dayton, earlier, where Goku and Gohan aren't the same. Goku loves fighting. Goku loves pushing himself to be better, be stronger, to be able to beat, other bigger, stronger challenges. And Gohan's pretty much just fighting for survival. Like, he's fighting because he needs to, because his friends will die if he doesn't.
Yeah. He's not there willingly. He's there because he can do something, and he's told to be there.
Yeah, it's more like he was born into that role, and he's doing it. I mean, in many ways, he's doing it because of his father. So there's a ton to unpack there that, we won't do all that during this review, but there's just such good character writing, such good character arcs throughout this. Even Cell's character arc of becoming perfect and then being an egotistical maniac who needs to test out that perfection and kind of bites him in the ass because he pushes other people, much like Vegeta did, to get stronger to be able to even challenge him. I mean, I could gush about this arc forever.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get to my rating because it shouldn't be very surprising at this point. I gave this one a perfect 10. I mean, Kaida's great with the pacing. The story is great. The emotional highs are there. Everything's there. I don't know what else I could change. The stuff before the final fight with Cell, I have plenty of criticisms for, but the payoff is just so goddamn good that I can't change anything. I love the villain. I love the key players involved. I love that it's Gohan, and I love the emotions he feels. And how this feels like a very different moment than Goku's moment with Frieza, right? Whereas Goku's moment felt like it was triumphant, whereas this one feels very tragic. And I love that kind of dynamic between the father and son, how they are different.
I agree with everything you said. I also gave it a 10 out of 10. I'll be honest, for the Kai version, I was very tempted to knock it off a point. Mostly, again, I'm going to keep harping on this because of the music. Because if you watch specifically the scene where Gohan turns Super Saiyan 2, when he snaps, the music in the original Japanese, phenomenal. The music in the original Funimation dub, the Faulkner score, incredible. The music in this one, honestly, though, this arc is so fucking good. I still didn't even knock the Kai version for that because they did a great job of cutting out all the filler stuff. I get like all the quality content that I want out of the Cell arc. It's just so good. I still gave it a 10 despite that.
Oh man. I mean, it's good. All right. I'm going to stop gushing. Go ahead and give us those scores, Readback.
That makes it For Dayton, for the Cell Games saga, a 10 out of 10. Todd, myself, a 10 out of 10. And Instant Transmission for the Cell Games saga, a full 10 out of 10.
All right, and this is where we jump into the Kai final chapters, which is all the Boo content. And the first saga is the Great Saiyaman saga, which covers episodes 99 through 105. Don't want to forget about that. After a 7-year break, Goku is still gone and Gohan is in high school. Trying to remain normal, Gohan takes up the vigilante identity of Saiyaman so he can fight crime and conceal his identity. Gohan's schoolmate Videl, the daughter of the world champ and savior of the world, Mr. Satan, is very suspicious and keeps a watchful eye on Gohan, eventually discovering his true identity and blackmailing him into entering the World Martial Arts Tournament in exchange for flight training. Gohan learns that Goku is going to come back to our world for a day to enter the tournament, and after word gets out, several other Z fighters enter as well. They all arrive, and Goku gets to meet his son Goten for the first time, and I don't remember if Vegeta breaks a punching machine here or later, but that happens.
I think that might be the next one. But yeah, I'm just going to say right now, I have a strong feeling that the numbers are going to start dropping hard from here on out.
All right, I'm going to be quick about this one because I don't want to dwell on this one for too long. Okay, so the elements I do like, I actually kind of like seeing Gohan go to high school and meet people and start, doing his own thing. So I don't mind that idea. I don't like the execution here because we're watching Dragon Ball Z Kai, and most of this felt fillery to me. Most of this felt like it could have been cut out. Even like these are boring episodes in Kai, which I know cut out some content. So I can only imagine how boring the original was. So I will give it some credit for saving me some time here. I mean, I guess the couple best things I can say about it is that we're only covering like 6 episodes in this saga, so it's not very long. And I do like the meeting because that happens at the very, very tail end of this when they basically show up at the World Martial Arts Tournament. And that's where the Great Saiyaman arc ends. And this is where Goten and Goku see each other for the first time. So, like, I feel like this should be in the next episode, but it happens at the very tail end of this. But yeah, I gave this one a 4 out of 10. I thought this was definitely below average. It doesn't break anything, so I'm not going to put it like way down in kind of the hell ratings where the show does stuff that I actively despise. But like, this was fillery. It could have been cut. There's very little good content in here. And the good content there is, it feels like it's drawn out way too long.
I agree with pretty much everything you said. I will just say right off the bat, since you gave your rating, that I gave this a 3 out of 10. So pretty similar to what you gave it. I honestly
I could have given it a 3 as well. Like, honestly, that rating sounds fine to me too.
We were close. Like,
it just sucks because I'm very aware of Super existing, and so these 6 episodes were definitely better than 6 episodes I've seen in unison or together in Super.
I almost gave it I think I almost gave it a 4 because of Super as well, actually, but
oh my God.
And honestly, I like the Great Saiyaman. Like, some people think he's annoying. I like him. I think he's fun. I mean, like you said, Dayton, we're watching Kai. It's supposed to be cut down. Most of this felt like filler. Admittedly, the original episodes for Gohan going to Orange Star High School were also not very good. I like the idea, like you said, Dayton, of Gohan going to high school. I don't even mind like getting to see some downtime. Like, sometimes it's nice to get to see that. It just is not executed well here, and Kai left in a bunch of stuff that really shouldn't have been left in, like stealing the dinosaur and retrieving the dinosaur.
That was a whole episode with just the dinosaur.
Exactly. Which was absolutely unnecessary. I mean, we do get to meet Videl, which is great. We start to build that relationship with Gohan and Videl. Sure. it's just the fact that these were already bad episodes and Kai failed to cut down what they should have cut down. That's why I gave it a 3.
Well, I mean, gosh, there's an entire episode they could have removed and we would have missed nothing. So it's not like
Yeah.
there are definitely times where I'm looking at Kai content, actually more specifically in the future here, where I'm like, I wish they could have cut this down, but like you kind of have to keep it because there's going to be this like one reference later. And if you cut this out, that reference won't make sense. And that reference is
Yeah.
kind of important. Like none of that's in here. Like nothing ever happens with the dinosaur again after this point.
No, not at all. I also want to point out, because as we're getting deeper into Kai, kind of towards the tail end story here, the Kai is so weirdly paced because the Saiyan arc is way too fast. The Namek and Freeze arc is where it starts to really kind of like figure out its pacing. The Cell arc is pretty well paced. I don't think there might have been a few things that they could have tightened up just a little bit. And then it just starts to get worse from there, as far as like super fast, then pretty good, then like a little dragged out, and then Boo starts to be like, why did you leave that in here?
Well, I mean, shoot, the Boo stuff is almost as long as everything else combined. Like it's kind of nuts.
That's true. Yeah. But yeah, I think that mostly covers that one. I'll give our scores for this one here. So Dayton gave the Great Saiyaman Saga a 4 out of 10. Todd, myself, gave it a 3 out of 10. And that gives it an instant transmission score of a 3.5 out of 10 for the Great Saiyaman Saga.
Which leads us into the World Tournament Saga, which covers episodes 106 through 114. All the Z fighters have arrived at the tournament, and their matches begin. Trunks and Goten easily handle all the junior competition, with Trunks taking the top prize. Our adult division is much more turbulent, with the mysterious Supreme Kai revealing himself, Videl having a very rough matchup, and Gohan getting jumped and sucked by a couple of goons thanks to the help of Supreme Kai. The henchmen escape. Vegeta doesn't get his match with Goku, and our Kai buddy uses the henchman. Oh, our Supreme Kai buddy uses the henchman to track down the secret location of the evil wizard Babidi. And yeah, so this chunk of episodes is, I mean, it's kind of a lot happening. I gotta say, it kind of feels like story spaghetti to me.
This one was really hard for me to rate, I'm not gonna lie. Some of these next couple of arcs were like, admittedly, I think when we were going through this, I actually liked the way that this was set up. I like that we're doubling back to the world tournament. We're bringing back old characters. Goku shows up. Goten gets to meet Goku, like you said, Dayton. Vegeta and 18 and Krillin and Piccolo are all participating in the tournament. And we even get to see Goten and Trunks. Like, I think I love the writing for Goten and Trunks in this portion. So props to the writers for all of that. But yes, also it's a little bit hard to follow. It's like, okay, is the tournament the important part? It ends up kind of being like the red herring. And Goku coming back is also still a little bit weird, but okay, sure, he gets a day on Earth. The tournament, I mean, we get to see like Videl fight. We get to see Gohan get absorbed his energy by two of the fighters from the tournament. There's a lot of weird stuff going on, but it's also this is definitely a setup arc. Like, it's trying to it's trying to plant seeds for us that we're going to kind of like continue to follow. And it presents a bunch of questions for us, like who is Babidi? Why did these guys steal Gohan's energy? I think by the end of this, it lets us know that Babidi is a wizard who's trying to summon this evil creature, Majin Buu. And so we as the audience are left with a bunch of questions. It's presented in a little bit of a weird and hard to follow way, I feel like, but in general, I don't know, it's fine. It's just, That's all I can say about it is it's fine.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. It doesn't do anything I hate, but it definitely, I don't know. It feels like a very forced story to me at points where like, all right, we need this to happen, so everyone's going to be at the tournament, and then this happens, so now everyone has to go here, and it doesn't feel like our characters are making a lot of decisions. It feels like decisions are being made for them, and they're just kind of going along for the ride. So it's, I don't know. It's not the most compelling story being told, and I don't know. It's fine. I actually like the Supreme Kai. I think he's a cool character. Um, I like him being added to the universe and his perspective. But yeah, I don't know. I actually don't have a ton to say about this because I don't think this is the most. There are a couple entertaining moments, but it's not the most entertaining string of episodes. So I'm gonna go out on a limb here and go ahead and just say that my score is a 6 out of 10. I think it's fine storytelling. Nothing's broken, but there's also kind of not super remarkable for me.
Yeah, I was very close to that with you on that too. I gave it a 5 out of 10. It's just I like Goten and Trunks and their character writing. That's probably the best thing I can say about this.
If only they had spent some time and actually glowing up that fight between those two and put some animation into it, make it kind of awesome because they do a couple cool things, but it's definitely not like their A game animation quality getting that fight together, which would have been so freaking fun.
That's kind of the other thing that I want to point out before we move to the next arc too is that I mean, I love Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z for more than just its fighting, but let's be honest, fighting is one of the core elements. There's almost no interesting fights in this chunk of episodes. Goten and Trunks is probably the best fight, and we get to see Videl get beat up by Spopovich, which, love it or hate it. Videl gets her butt kicked. Yeah, it just doesn't have anything that really sticks out to me. But I don't know. I think that's pretty much everything, unless you had anything else, Dayton.
No, I mean it's hard to comment just because it feels like it's just putting story down your throat and then you swallow it and continue on.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much on the same page about this one. So that is going to be for the World Tournament Saga. Dayton gave it a 6 out of 10. Todd gave it a 5 out of 10. And that makes our instant transmission score for the World Tournament Saga a 5.5 out of 10.
All right, that brings us into the Babidi Saga, which covers episodes 115 through 122. Vegeta, Gohan, and Goku all battle through Babidi's henchmen as they seek to stop the evil wizard from awakening the universal threat of Majin Buu. After easily defeating the wizard's greatest warriors, Vegeta finds himself marked by the evil wizard and begins his promised battle with Goku. While the two Saiyans fight, Supreme Kai and Gohan go and fight Dabura and Babidi to try and stop Buu from hatching before Vegeta and Goku's battle can cause that to happen. And I've got to say that there's some good build up in here, I feel. I do think we spend probably a little bit too much time on fighting Babidi's henchmen who are not actually like a threat. There's some gags in it that are kind of funny where Supreme Kai's like, oh, this is, one of the strongest monsters in the universe and it's Babidi's henchmen. And then, Goku and Vegeta both beat them, no problem. And it's kind of funny, but it's not terribly interesting, but you get a little bit of a laugh out of it. I mean, it is what it is. It's a fine chunk of episodes. I like the build up it's setting though. The reveal of Vegeta falling under the spell of Bobby is that's freaking awesome, and I love where that goes next. But that's at the very tail end of this, so you don't really get to weigh that a whole lot.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said there. I like the reveals of some of the new characters here when we run into Babidi's ship. I like getting to see Babidi. I like that he's a wizard, even though that doesn't play into a lot of different stuff here. I like getting to see Dabura. I like
Dabura's really cool. I probably emphasize that. He is a fun character.
Yeah, we talked about that in our coverage of these episodes. Both Dayton and I really like Dabura. Very, very interesting techniques, very fun to watch fight. I even like getting to see the other characters here, especially getting to see Supreme Kai's response to Goku, Gohan, and Vegeta basically just wiping the floor with some of Babidi's minions. And I mean, even getting to see like an interesting fight, like Yakan, the fight with Yakan and Goku is not, it's not an incredible fight, but it's at least different, where Yakan kind of like eats light and eats energy, and you get the brief moment of Goku going Super Saiyan 2 to defeat Yakan, and Vegeta clocking that, and that almost certainly being like the key moment where Vegeta was like, oh, Goku's still, or Kakarot is still much stronger than I am. I need to level the playing field here, and kind of making that decision to let Babidi take him over. So this one and some of the next arcs were so hard for me to rate, because there's like some really interesting stuff going on here, but also nothing that is like wildly stands out as just really, really good.
Yeah, this is because I have a note where like there's a lot of things that are decent that are happening, but it feels like at this point we've spent 23 episodes setting up something that's going to happen. That's a long time to be waiting for some level of payoff, some big fight, some big moment, but it just feels like we've been waiting forever for this payoff. And that's why I kind of ding this one a little bit is, I mean, yeah, we're still doing setup and it's fine setup, but man, how long do I got to wait until like something cool happens?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, that's almost 10 hours of content. And again, we're watching Kai. This is supposed to be the truncated version of Dragon Ball Z. It's supposed to be condensed down. And it's, I mean, part of it is the source material, right? It was drug out a little bit too, but it's the pacing at this point in Kai is still just dragging out. And
my thing though is looking at this chunk of episodes, I don't know what you cut.
Yeah, it starts to get tricky, right? That's why I was saying the source material is kind of like drug out here a little bit, but maybe some minor like gags and jokes, but even, yeah, most of it is pretty relevant. I think that's just, you know, that plays into the source material though for this arc is just kind of mediocre.
Yeah, and I mean, once again, we're kind of seeing a trend with a lot of this where there's nothing in here that ruins it for me. There are a couple neat moments that happen as well. But like I'm still kind of waiting to really be entertained at this point. Like it's just, I mean, at this point I'm blue balling. Like give me something, give me some payoff here soon, because I'm getting sick of waiting. And I'll go ahead and just go into my score. So I gave this one a 7 out of 10. I think this is slightly better than, I don't know, kind of the forced story that was happening in the World Tournament saga. But at the same time, I could easily also give this one a 6 out of 10. But there's just a couple things I do like. I like getting to know the Supreme Kai a little bit better, and some of his observation on our Saiyan warriors and how they fit into the world. The reveal that Vegeta's being, turned or under the control of Babidi's pretty freaking massive, man. Like that's a big reveal. And I mean, I don't know how much Kai cut out of the original to come up with like the episodes we were given, but it's got to be better than the original. There's no way that this isn't an improvement, or at least on par.
Yeah, that's a good point. This is kind of funny because I'm, especially with these last few arcs, I'm consistently rating them 1 point less than you are, but we're basically on the same page here, because I gave the Babidi saga here a 6 out of 10. I agree with everything that you said, Dayton. It honestly, the point here that I like the most is Vegeta giving himself into Babidi, and we get Majin Vegeta, and we kind of get the I think in these episodes we kind of get the start of the fight between Goku and Vegeta, and that is the most interesting to me. I mean, we'll talk more about it, but Vegeta's character arc throughout the Buu saga is the most compelling to me. But there's just not a lot that stands out in this chunk of episodes. And like you said, Dayton, it's already dragging on for 20 plus episodes just to get to anything really meaningful. So that's really all I have to say about it.
It doesn't really do anything that wrong. It's still delivering story. These episodes are still at least doing something. And I don't know. But either way, let's go ahead. Let's jump. Oh, well, why don't you go ahead and give us our combined scores here?
Here we go. So that ends up being Dayton giving the Babidi Saga a 7 out of 10, Todd, myself, giving it a 6 out of 10, and that makes our instant transmission score a 6.5 out of 10 for the Babidi Saga.
Now that leads us into the Majin Buu Saga, which covers a girthy episode range of 123 through 140. Buu hatches and easily defeats our warriors, Vegeta even sacrificing himself in the struggle. Goku reveals Super Saiyan 3, but opts to teach Goten and Trunks fusion to pass the torch of Earth's defender to the next generation before his time on Earth runs out. The boys learn fusion while Gohan trains on the world of the Kais, and eventually Goku, when his time runs out on Earth, goes to the planet of the Kais to help Gohan train. Mr. Satan somehow befriends Buu during all of this and may have actually saved the world through friendship if it wasn't for a rash man shooting our bubble gum monster's little doggy. And buddy, there's a lot that happens here.
I just want you to know how frustrated I was when I was rating this one, because it contains one of my favorite Vegeta moments, probably period, in his sacrifice in trying to defeat Majin Buu. An incredible emotional moment, beautiful character arc for Vegeta. It contains the Super Saiyan 3 transformation, which some people love it, some people hate it. I really enjoy it. And so it has those two highlights for me. And then it contains the fucking filler annoying bullshit with Gotenks going to fight Majin Buu, and also
I completely forgot about that. Oh no, my rating's not going to reflect that. Oh no. Oh my.
I hated that part. But then it also has, I mean, I like some of the stuff with Mr. Satan and Buu, but I also feel like it drags here. I feel like there are moments that are like, they just go on for too long of him trying to befriend Majin Buu.
All right, I made a point change. It's going to affect my numbers at the very end, but I have to make a point change because I forgot about that, where he like learns the normal form, or he fuses and he's in normal form and flies out and gets his butt kicked and then comes back and then flies out again. Yeah, that stuff was super annoying. I forgot about that. Oh.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, well, now you and I both have convinced each other to change our scores a little bit.
Okay, so, but I do want to touch on the high points because, man, the high points are really high. Vegeta has some of his best on-screen time during this saga. His sacrifice is hugely emotional. He has a couple monologues throughout all of this, which are fantastic. And then just the animation for his explosion. And I mean, all of that is great. All of Vegeta's moments in here are awesome. I also do like, and I agree that the Mr. Satan stuff drags out a little bit too long. But I like the story. I think it's a very good story to be told. So I'm willing to hand wave that. I'm willing to forgive that because I think it's a fantastic story. It could have been told a little bit more concisely. Okay, yeah, I agree. But it's a great story. I like following it. This is where you really kind of get to know Mr. Satan as a character. And I like that. Super Saiyan 3 it's a thing. It's on screen. It's there. You can see it. It shows up. Goku is losing his eyebrows. Um, I mean, I will give Super Saiyan 3 some credit, is that it's more visually interesting than Super Saiyan 2. Um, I am one of those people who I wish I would have seen something happen to see this transformation. It's also weird because like this is like we don't ever really get anything beyond this transformation though throughout the rest of the Boo content. There's no like oh well we had Super Saiyan 3 but now we're going to go and find the next level. It's like no, we never really moved past Super Saiyan 3 throughout the rest of Boo. So we're kind of like we're showing the trump card pretty early here.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, I guess the only thing that is kind of the trump card beyond Super Saiyan 3 is fusion, right? Like the fusion dance and the Patara earrings, but
Not if you've seen the ending.
wow. Fair. I'll give you that.
But yeah, I do agree that fusion is technically, I guess something beyond Super Saiyan, but I don't know how to quantify that. It's an interesting element.
Yeah, I guess I'm saying beyond, if only because it creates characters or people or who are stronger than just a Super Saiyan 3 Goku, but it's not on the same scale of like transformations, if you want to think of it that way.
I think technically, if you rule out fusions, Gohan was the strongest individual in this whole series. He's actually in his what is it, mystic form or whatever. He's actually more powerful than Goku in his Super Saiyan 3 form, which is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting to me too, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we move forward. But
right, yeah, tipping our hands and all. I mean, there were a couple weird pacing issues throughout of this, but it might also run into that we have a colossal amount of like content and we're not sure like how do we cut this and like this scene leads into this scene and we need that second scene, but it doesn't make sense for him to be there unless we show you the first scene. So there's I don't know, there's this whole thing there's so much story soup that's happening that sometimes it's hard to follow. And I don't know, that is a kind of on display here. But overall, I think this is where the high moments outweigh the bad moments in this. I actually enjoy the high points so much that I'm willing to kind of weigh it in that favor a little bit more.
yeah, and that makes sense. And I mean, I think most of the Goku and Vegeta fight is in this chunk of episodes, which has some fun moments in it. It has some great dialogue between Goku and Vegeta.
Yes.
Vegeta's sacrifice is always going to be a favorite moment of mine. I'm so frustrated that this chunk of episodes is all together in one arc because I deeply want to give Vegeta's sacrifice a good rating. And it's weighed and dragged down by the bullshit that comes after it with Gotenks and with some of the stuff with Mr. Satan. And admittedly, I love Mr. Satan's story and his arc. And I actually even like that we get to see Boo kind of being showing an element of humanity here. Like when he meets I think this is the chunk where he meets the blind kid.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He gives him the milk that might have been a person or something.
We don't worry about that. It's human milk and not the way you think it is.
Yeah, exactly. Heals his blindness. Like all of that is great. I really, really enjoy that. I just think that some of that stuff with Mr. Satan drug out a little bit too long. And I even, again, we talked about this when we covered these episodes. I like that Goten and Trunks are going to be put into a position to be the next heroes to solve the problem that is Majin Buu. And I like Goku taking the mentor role, and even Goku expressing later that he probably could have beaten Majin Buu in Super Saiyan 3 form, but he wanted to give the boys, the next generation, a chance to do something. I like all of that. And so I'm kind of bummed that this gets dragged down by some of the other elements in this this arc.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of those similar reasons, I actually give this one a good score. I actually really enjoy this chunk of episodes. It really feels like they're starting to, do the passing of the torch thing. And we've got a great moment with Vegeta, and we've got the villain not quite being as villainous as you would think he is. There's a lot of good parts here. I think the story soup makes me knock a point off, and then the filler and pacing makes me knock another point off. But outside of that, I can't think of too many reasons to knock more points off because I actually really enjoyed this chunk of episodes. So then that's where I land. I give this an 8 out of 10.
We're gonna continue to be consistently me 1 point under you for all of these arcs, where I gave it a 7 out of 10. I was just frustrated by the Gotenks. Honestly, the Gotenks shenanigans should have, at the bare minimum with Kai, should have just been cut out. Like,
Yes.
there was no reason for him to go fight Boo multiple times. So that part was frustrating to me, but still giving it a solid score because Vegeta's sacrifice is incredible. The fight with Goku and Vegeta is fun. The Goku going Super Saiyan 3 is a great moment. And like you said, Dayton, the story with Goten and Trunks and the story with Boo and Satan, all of that is good. So can't knock it too many points, I guess.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, and I definitely had to rate it higher than a lot of the very middling, like Android story forcing devices and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I have some moments that I would consider like some of my favorite moments in Dragon Ball in this like chunk of episodes. So I rate it pretty highly. But yeah, you want to give us that combo score?
Yeah, that means that Dayton gave the Majin Buu saga an 8 out of 10. Todd, myself, giving it a 7 out of 10, giving us an instant transmission score of 7.5 out of 10 for the Majin Buu saga.
All right, and that leads us into the Fusion Saga, which covers episodes 141 through 155. Boo becomes overwhelmed with anger, causing an evil Boo to split from him. Evil Boo defeats Majin Buu and absorbs him, becoming Super Boo. Super Boo goes to the lookout, kills every human on Earth, then battles the fusion of Goten and Trunks' Gotenks. After a long and fairly childish battle, Gotenks runs out of juice and the battle is over until a juiced up Gohan arrives to save the day. Super Boo is evilly outmatched and is forced to temporarily retreat. When he reveals himself once more, he sneakily absorbs Gotenks and Piccolo, and the pendulum swings back to the evil side. Elder Kai loopholes Goku back to life, who then returns to Earth. Boo absorbs Gohan. Vegeta is brought back from Otherworld per the request of King Yeba. And then Goku and Vegeta fuse into Vegeto and beat the snot out of Boo, then allow themselves to be absorbed into the monster's body. Oh my god.
Your synopsis, well done on that, by the way, because there's a whole shit fucking toilet bowl mess of stuff that happens in this chunk of episodes.
I mean, it's just like, oh my god, there's so much going on. And then like so many questions are introduced. So like when Boo and the evil Boo split and then they like absorb each other. Also, where did the evil Boo come from and how does like that work? And then that raises more questions in the future when more transformations start happening. Like it's a freaking mess to follow this character.
It really is. I honestly, the last arc, the Majin Buu saga, was probably the pinnacle of the whole Buu story. This to me is the falling point of the roller coaster where the Buu arc starts to really fall apart. And there's just so many things wrong with this. With, like you said, with Evil Boo kind of being like a convoluted mess and the different forms of Boo. We get to see Gotenks fail to solve the problem of Boo, and so that's fine. Like,
well, we can hit on Gotenks real quick for a second here because there are some good elements to Gotenks, but I also feel like he was handled incredibly poorly. Like, to hit on the good elements, I love that he more or less trained him, like Goten and Trunks trained themselves in the hyperbolic time chamber. And so the result of that was is these children came up with a bunch of child like superhero moves that they thought were awesome. And I love that. It absolutely makes sense that when they fuse together and become Go Tanks, they're throwing like super rocket punches and all these like weird like jawbreaker attacks and all kinds of like crazy stuff, right? Like way over the top. It's obviously ridiculous. They've got a million moves. Most of them are not really effective. The Ghost Kamikaze attack is such an awesome signature move, by the way. So I'm glad that we are given something that's super unique and honestly kind of childish. So it definitely fits, what two kids would come up with as far as their ultimate attack. Now to the bad. Gotenks wears out his welcome. He never seems to mature. He never seems to learn from his mistakes. And like we keep retreading the same ground over and over again with this character where it's just like he doesn't finish them off. He makes an immature decision. He lies about what he's doing. He doesn't listen to his masters. And it's just like he does this over and over and over again. And on top of that, the battle lasts for freaking ever. And at one point, they're locked in the hyperbolic time chamber, Boo and Piccolo and Gotenks, and they just yell to get out of it. They just yell open a hole and leave. And it bothers the pants off of me, just the way everything with Gotenks is handled.
I agree. I like his techniques. I think they're fun and interesting. I like the reason behind why he came up with those techniques. But it's such a mess. Like, you actually were the one who brought up the fact that Goten and Trunks, there's almost no growth there, at least from like a character perspective. Mm-hmm. And when you said that, I was like, yeah, I agree with you. You're absolutely right. It's just such a bummer to see like what really cool writing we got for them. Goten even watching his mother die, and that kind of driving him forward. But yeah, nothing really comes of it in the end. The only kind of saving grace is that by the end of it, Gohan shows up to kind of save the day when Goten and Trunks defuse. And so this whole thing that's being set up of like, okay, either Gohan's going to save the day or Goten and Trunks are going to save the day. Okay, Goten and Trunks failed, so now Gohan's here. Like, okay, that's great writing. I actually really, really liked that. And that whole situation is shat on when Gohan basically becomes irrelevant within the span of a single episode when Boo absorbs Gotenks, basically just using his own taunts to get Goten and Trunks to fuse again, getting all the power of Gotenks, and then wiping the floor with Gohan.
Yeah, Gohan, I mean, he doesn't even get like a good fight, right? Maybe I feel a little bit different if he puts up like a hell of a battle and it's animated well and he does some awesome stuff and I'm like, all right, cool. Like we get to see the improvement. No, we don't see anything here. It honestly just looks like Gohan wasted his time and then showed up, had a poorly animated fight, and then just kind of gets brushed aside, or I guess, brushed inside. And it's not great. And to kind of speak to, I mean, I feel like the Vegito battle is also one that I remember being a lot better than it actually was. There's a couple like funny moments to it, but for some reason as a kid, I remember that being like badass. And going back and rewatching it, I don't know. I'm just not even impressed with that either.
I honestly felt the same. I like a lot of elements. It has a lot of great pieces, but I was surprised watching the animation. It's not terrible, but there's nothing in there that I was like, that is incredible. That is a really cool like set piece for a fight. And it's really well animated. It was all kind of like, this is mediocre animation, even if the set pieces are cool, like him getting turned into a jawbreaker and whooping Boo's ass. Always going to be cool to me, but none of it was like blow me away animation.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there are a couple cool things. And I mean, I don't know. It's just I feel like in the previous chunk of episodes we had like that passing of the torch happening, and then immediately we go back and just give up on all of it, and we see, we see the torches just being put out. And so yeah, for me, because I don't think the fights are animated well. If anything, I think the fights are I mean, the Gotenks fights are kind of annoying and distracting and then take too long. And then the Vegito fight, I do like the jawbreaker thing. And the whole beam thing he can do where he can like hold it out or whatever, that's kind of cool too.
Spirit Sword is really cool. Yeah, I agree.
I wish we would have put some A game animation into it though, because it's outside of like the couple things that happen, there's not very much choreography, and it's not a terribly interesting fight because it's so one-sided.
That's fair, I think. Yeah. Like there are things that I think are interesting just because Vegito has unique techniques and Boo has so many unique techniques. Like even when Boo like goes inside of Vegito's mouth and tries to effectively explode him from the inside, and then Vegito turns him into a giant tumor and whoops his ass. Like there are cool moments like that, but it's still just like watching it through again, I was a little bit disappointed. And I mean, to say nothing of, you already touched on it, but to say nothing of the disappointment that is, oh, well, I guess this whole story arc with Goten, Trunks, and Gohan just gets thrown out the window, and they just, okay, Goku's alive and he's back, and Vegeta got time on Earth because they need to save the Earth from Boo. Now it's just the Goku and Vegeta show again.
Yeah, and for me, that's why it took me a minute to come up with what number I wanted to give this, but I ended up with a 3 out of 10. This chunk of episodes did things that I actively dislike, that were detrimental to the story and my enjoyment of the Dragon Ball series. So yeah, I very much despise this chunk of episodes because we were going in the right direction and you 180'd hard here. So yeah, that's where I land on that one.
Where this is going to be one where we deviate a little bit, but it's really interesting to hear your point, and I'm almost tempted to drop my score a little bit as you say that, because I gave it a 5 out of 10, which to me is still like, I mean, we talked about it. There are a lot of problems I have with this chunk of episodes. I still really enjoy, like, I mean, Gohan has, even though it's so fucking brief, has the really cool one-liner of like, I'm here to kill you. Getting to see him on the scene in his mystic form is cool. Even though I don't like the focus getting shifted to Goku and Vegeta, I do like Vegito still, and I like a lot of his techniques, and he has fun moments, even though it's not as well animated as I remembered as a kid. And I don't know. I really struggled when rating this one. It is like, it's definitely the downside of the Boo arc, in my opinion. This one was really hard for me. We didn't even touch on the fact that I fucking hate Super Boo basically being a Cell clone. And basically being...
that's right, because he doesn't have much dialogue, but the couple of times we hear him speak around this time is... Yeah, it is this time where he talks about how he has to be the strongest in the universe when Gohan shows up. That's right, yeah.
It absolutely is. And as we're talking about it, I'm getting more and more upset with this part of it, and I'm tempted to drop my score. I'm going to leave it at a 5, but there's a lot to dislike about this portion of the show.
I think I had one of those earlier where I was just like, I'm giving it this, but put an asterisk next to that because it could easily go down on.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think you'll kind of level out our instant transmission score. So that basically makes it Dayton giving the Fusion Saga a 3 out of 10, Todd, myself, giving it a 5 out of 10, and our instant transmission score giving it a 4 out of 10 for the Fusion Saga.
And that leads us into the Kid Buu Saga, which is episodes 156 through 165. Vegeta and Goku escape from Super Boo's body with their Z Fighter friends and Fat Buu all in hand. This causes Buu to revert forcibly back to his original state, Kid Buu. Earth is immediately destroyed, with the Supreme Kai saving Goku, Vegeta, and Mr. Satan in a desperate final act. After arriving upon the world of the Kais, Goku and Vegeta battle the evil kid monster. When things start looking bad, Vegeta begins scheming ways to win the match, wishing the Earth back and utilizing the idol Mr. Satan to cobble together enough energy and time to create a large enough spirit bomb to finally defeat the universal threat of Kid Buu. Peace is finally returned to the world.
This was another hard one for me to rate, man. Like,
yeah, oh man, I don't know. There are things I love about this chunk of episodes and things that I'm not crazy about.
Yes.
And, I mean, God, the first note I have on this is I'm very torn on this saga. Because one, Kid Buu is like, there's a Jekyll and Hyde to everything. Kid Buu is very interesting to watch, but also like he's not the most compelling villain.
Yeah.
I love the actual like fight animation between Goku and Kid Buu. Like, it's animated super well. It's fucking phenomenal. Like, it looks awesome. I just wish it would have been anybody else but Goku fighting Kid Buu, because I would have been so much more invested into it. So you have like this like eye porn element to it, but also I'm not super emotionally invested because we kind of gave up on all the stories we were writing when we went back to Goku. Mr. Satan is like one of the best parts about this chunk of episodes, which is just wild. So there's at least some clever storytelling there that has some payoff to it. And I mean, I don't know, because I love and hate the very, very, like, the finish to it is, we wish a planet back so that way we can give Goku energy. And then we make another wish to restore Goku's energy. And it's just like, it's so unbelievably Goku centric. It's like distracting.
The wishes almost seem convoluted too, in the way that you just like, yeah, the way you portrayed them and stuff. It's they're so weird. The fact that
I mean? Like, we just got done talking about like Gohan's battle with Cell. And just like, I don't even feel like this holds a candle to that. Not that this is bad, but that, well, maybe whatever. I don't feel as emotionally invested in everything that's happening. I'm mostly confused.
Yeah, and I think I feel exactly the same way. Like, the fight between Goku and Buu, as far as fight choreography and animation, I would argue it's top 5 in all of Dragon Ball. It's so good.
Dude, Buu is so fun to watch.
Absolutely. It's gorgeous and so much fun to watch. But yeah, why is it Goku? It should not be Goku. It should be Gohan. No matter what situation, like, there's so many different ways we could have gotten Gohan involved in this. Goku could have instant transmissioned and grabbed Gohan and been like, hey, you're stronger than me. Go get him, son. They could have used the fucking second wish after they wish everybody back to wish Gohan to the planet for Gohan to fight.
That would have been awesome to bring him in, like, you know, in the 9th inning sort of thing, like, Gohan, save us. Ugh.
There's so many other ways this should have gone. Like, admittedly, again, and we talked about this when we covered this, but I love Mr. Satan being like the actual hero. So, I mean, sure, Spirit Bomb, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Mr. Satan getting the people of Earth on board for the Spirit Bomb, and that being Vegeta's plan, and Vegeta also expressing, Goku, you are stronger than me. I admit it. I accept it.
I love Vegeta kind of like putting everything in motion, though, and kind of like grabbing the reins and guiding everything along. Like, I love tactical Vegeta. It's so good.
I love that. I love Mr. Satan being the one to get all of the humans on board and becoming the hero that he claims he is. I'll say it again. If you replace Goku with Gohan, even having Gohan use the Spirit Bomb, infinitely better ending.
Yeah, I'm so conflicted. I'm so conflicted because for everything I love, there's something that just like really kind of, I don't know, like, just chops it off at the ankle sort of thing, where it's just like, this could have been so much better. Like, all you had to do was commit to all the storylines you were writing, and we could have had an excellent story. But instead, it's like, I don't know. We're here. I want to like this more. That's kind of where I end up at. I want to like if you wrote down all of my favorite things and said this is all in this chunk of episodes, like yeah, why isn't that a 10 out of 10? But somehow they found a way to just to kneecap it, to slow it down, to make it not the perfect like final ending it could have been.
Yeah. No, I very much agree with you. I mean, just the fact that Goten, Trunks, and Gohan completely get left out, and like the whole thing in the earlier part of this, Goku fighting, Fat Boo, and Goku basically being like, I want to make sure that the next generation can protect the Earth. Like, I'm dead. Like I shouldn't have any say in this. And then that completely gets thrown out the window, and Goku's like, well, I'm alive again. Guess I'm going to save the day.
And by the way, that felt extremely loopholey. It was a little bit funny, but also very loopholey.
It's a good gag way to get Goku back in, but also death doesn't mean anything in Dragon Ball already because we've got at least 2 sets of Dragon Balls. And so
for now,
making for now, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and just give my score. This is a very not confident score, but it's where I landed at. I gave this a 6 out of 10. Just because I felt like the story elements were bad, but the fighting animation was good, and also Mr. Satan was good, and I liked some of the Vegeta stuff.
I feel the exact same way you do. I appropriately also gave this a 6 out of 10. It's so hard to rate this one, man. Like there's some really great, really cool elements that are just absolutely ruined by the way they decided to take the story. It's just super frustrating.
Yeah, and I mean, this is definitely one where, I'm going to look up the good fighting bits on YouTube and just watch through it, but I'm just not as invested in this as, other moments in Dragon Ball where I would sit there and watch the entire thing play out because it's so goddamn good. This isn't that. This is, I don't know. There's a lot of letdowns in here. And I mean, honestly, if the fighting animation wasn't so good, I would say that this is actively a bad ending. I think it's just the fight animation that really carries a lot of the water here for me. Just because it's fantastic. Boo's interesting. But outside of that, you lose that fight animation quality. Man, this score goes way, 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 way down for me.
It definitely would. I mean, the character arcs for Vegeta and particularly Mr. Satan, I very much enjoy. So those carry a lot of weight here for me too. But yeah, that fight animation's carrying the other half of that 6 score. So
yeah. Shoot. Well, we've got one more saga to go. So you want to go ahead and give us this score so we can get into that one?
Let's do it. That means that for the Kid Buu saga, Dayton gave it a 6 out of 10. Todd, myself, gave it a 6 out of 10, giving us an instant transmission score of an appropriately satanic 6 out of 10. Hail Satan.
Hail Satan. So before I get into the Peaceful World saga, which covers episodes 166 through 167, at the very end of the Kid Buu saga, there's this really nice couple of scenes that play out that show the world at peace. Goku's actually like in a hot tub with Goten and Trunks, and they're like splashing and playing around, and like it's a really wholesome moment to see the families kind of coming together and this kind of father-son, fun moment playing out. And it's like it's an excellent ending point. And then they gave us 2 more episodes, which is the Peaceful World saga. And what happens is 10 years pass and Buu is reincarnated into a nice young boy per Goku's request. Goku abandons his family to go train with this young man. In these 10 years, nobody else has become relevant, so Goku wished for somebody to become relevant.
That's my favorite synopsis that you've given so far.
I mean, it's... all right. So it's not as terrible as the wedding dress arc, but it's
No,
like pretty not great. Like the fact that I'm comparing it to the wedding dress arc shows you the company it's keeping.
it's pretty unfortunate. And the wedding dress arc is, for anybody who doesn't remember, is basically I think the last two episodes, maybe three, of the original Dragon Ball that were completely unnecessary, added to the tail end of it, that almost ruined a very perfect ending. This to me kind of does the same thing, but not as egregiously.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't add anything for me. That's my thing is watching this. I'm like, all right, so Goten is like just like Gohan and doesn't actually want to fight and is kind of lazy. Gohan just doesn't fight at all anymore. Krillin still hasn't found a way to become relevant. It almost makes it seem like everybody's given up, and I hate that. Like that's so. I don't. You have all these awesome characters, and then you write like the storyline. We're 10 years late. For 10 years, they sat around and did nothing.
Yeah, and this sits in a really weird space, especially if you consider Dragon Ball Super, because most of, well, all of Dragon Ball Super actually takes place between the end of Kid Buu getting killed with the Spirit Bomb and these two episodes, because there's this I think it's a 10-year gap between this Peaceful World saga and the end of Kid Buu, and that's all Dragon Ball Super in there. So we're talking like Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan Blue, Ultra Instinct, all the other stuff that happens in the manga up to that point, Superhero with Pan and Gohan Beast, and all of that is in there, which makes this really weird, in addition to just not being a great ending for Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, man, I don't know. I mean, it's injected in there because they thought that this was the end, right? Like there's going to be no more Dragon Ball after this. This was just like a little wrap up, a little thing to throw in there. I mean, I don't know how they decided on this was the thing they wanted to throw in there, but whatever. I guess it's kind of a throwaway story arc is almost what it feels like. Especially at this point with Super existing, but man, they were off base with the direction that everything should have gone. It feels terrible watching all of your favorite characters just fade away into obscurity.
And I mean, yeah, that's a good way to put it. Your synopsis was, I mean, while comical, literally Goku gets a bunch of his friends to go to another world tournament, including his granddaughter Pan, who I think is maybe like 3 or 4 years old. And you kind of get the impression that, maybe Goku had trained with Pan, but she's definitely a fighter of her own right. She, whoops the shit out of some guy who's 5 times her size. And that's kind of fun to see. Like, I like getting to see Pan, Goku's daughter, basically, be a badass like he was as a kid. But Pan is basically like when Goku fights Oob, the reincarnation of Buu, and then says, "Oh, hey, you don't know how to use your power. I'm going to go live with you in your village for the next 5 years and train with you." Pan is like, "Grandpa, I'm going to miss you. Like, I don't know if she says anything about training with him, but I mean, us as the audience can kind of be like, why would Goku forego training his granddaughter to train this stranger?
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I just have a note that says it's kind of funny that all of Goku's kids are disappointments, so he basically wished for one that wasn't.
Oh my God. And that, I mean, again, puts a cherry on top of the problem with Gohan in the Buu arc, right? Where, like, when Goku beats Kid Buu, we already said it. Gohan is stronger than Goku. But despite that, they decided to put Goku back in the limelight and defeat Boo. I don't know, man. The tail end of this just frustrates me.
Yeah, all right, so I'm not gonna hide it anymore. You probably would have been able to guess it. I give the Peaceful World Saga a 1 out of 10.
Ooh.
It only makes the story worse. I nothing is re- Nothing's redeemable about this to me. Like, it's all terrible. All the side characters are side charactered. Goku abandons his family for some random kid he found. I dislike it, especially because right before this, you had a perfect ending point for the series. If you just delete the Peaceful World Saga, you have a great, wholesome ending point of Goku hanging out with all of his friends and family. It's awesome. I love it. And then he abandons all of them in the next saga. Like, I'm done. I'm out of here. Check out.
I didn't give it quite that low, but I can't fault you for doing that for sure. I agree with largely everything that you said. I ended up giving it a 3 out of 10. Part of that, though, was because I looked back at the, what is it, the fucking wedding dress arc in Dragon Ball, and we both gave that like a 1 and a 2. And I was like, this is not as bad as that arc.
Yeah, I don't know, man. The fact that you had to go back and compare it to it tells me that it's in the same league as the wedding dress arc. Like,
It's close.
Like, this one, the wedding dress arc is like an F minus, and this is an F in my book.
And yeah, no argument from me with you giving it a 1 for sure. I can definitely understand why. I'll see if I can bring out any of the positives that I like about it here for just a brief second. I think the biggest positive is Pan. I like getting to see Pan. I like that she gets to be a badass. I mean, she just seems fun here. It's cool to see her beat up some big ass dude in the World Martial Arts Tournament. Beyond that, I don't know. I'm torn on Goku's blue gi. Like, there's a part of me that's like, oh, cool, he's got a new outfit, but I don't really like the outfit that much. The fight between Goku and Oob it's not amazing, but it's not terrible. I mean, I guess there's payoff and they answer the question where Goku said, I hope, Boo, that you come back reincarnated.
Oh, we also never addressed the fact that they used the Dragon Balls to wish for everyone to forget about Boo.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that too. Which is, I hate that, to be honest.
Which I think that might technically happen at the very end of the previous saga, but
it does.
I don't know. I was thinking of things I didn't like, so it reminded me of that.
Yeah, that's another. Just add another one to the list. I don't know. There's kind of an element that I maybe like about Mr. Satan winning these tournaments because Majin Buu beats all the other people.
Funny. That is kind of fun. I do actually kind of like that gag.
That's kind of fun. There is also a little bit of fun comedy in Mr. Satan being scared about his win when Goku and Vegeta and all of the others show up. So I mean, there's some things to like about this, and it is a send off for Goku, I guess, as he leaves his friends and family to go train Oob, but it's not a good send off. It's still, in that way, it's still better than the stupid wedding dress arc, though.
Yeah, it's a couple of episodes. That's for darn sure. I'll at least agree with you there.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we both agree that it is not a good way to end Dragon Ball Z, unfortunately.
Yeah, like I said, they had the perfect ending point at the end of the Kid Buu saga. Like, I love it. Just like the world's returned to peace. Everyone's like getting together and getting along. You get wholesome family moments. And I'm just like, this is great. This is a good spot where you could end it here. And it's a great spot to pick back up from if you need to. Like, it's such a good ending point.
That's true. It also would have made the transition into Dragon Ball Super much more seamless without this kind of awkward, Peaceful World saga 10-year gap like looming over all of the events of Dragon Ball Super. So kind of knock it for that reason as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious if we'll ever see like the stories merged or if they're just going to ignore that 10-year gap.
Man, the manga is supposed to be it's supposed to basically be at the same time frame as the Peaceful World arc right now. Like Pan is basically like 3 to 4 years old. And so they'll basically be touching on, or should be touching on, the Peaceful World saga, but they still have not actively addressed it. And now the manga's on hiatus, so I don't know.
Who
I don't
knows?
know if we'll ever get that convergence.
All right. Well, what's our combined score here?
So that's going to be Dayton giving the Peaceful World saga a 1 out of 10. Todd, myself, giving it a 3 out of 10, leaving us with a very appropriate 2 out of 10 for the Peaceful World saga.
Now, I don't know if you remember doing this, but I believe we had our average scores and then our overall scores, right?
Yes. I might have to recalculate my average since I did change a score, but it should be pretty close at least.
I would say I changed a point, so I'm going to be close enough.
Yeah.
But my average score and what I gave are actually kind of different until you change one element, and I thought this was interesting. So my average score was 6.9 out of 10. Nice. And that's without that point change I had made earlier. But my overall series scores, looking at all of this, Boo, Frieza Saiyans, all of it, I gave everything overall an 8 out of 10. I thought this is an excellent adventure. I think some of the highest, most peakest Dragon Ball moments happen throughout all of this. And I mean, really, it's just some low points drag it down a couple for me. So it's not perfect. But I think that's Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball isn't perfect, and I still appreciate it for what it is. Now, my average score, if you remove the Boo saga, is 8.85.
I kind of want to calculate that for mine really quick because I did not do that, but
because I was looking at these scores and I was just like, hold on, like just a quick skim through here, and I was just like, huh, this seems to be kind of weighted a little bit. So I went through and I was just like, I just want to know what my score is without the Boo stuff, and I was like 8.85. I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. So I mean, there's kind of a drastic score swing for me when you before the Boo stuff and then including the Boo stuff.
Give me 1 second. Let's see. 1, 2.
So I thought that was interesting. I didn't do an overall series score for without the Boo stuff because I do want to do all the stuff together because this is all of Z together and you should rate it all together. But I don't know, man. I just thought that was hilarious, especially because like when you start handing out 10s, and man, I handed out 2 10s in this series review, which is crazy. Like you kind of got to start looking at things through a more critical eye. Like, are you sure this is a 10? Are you sure this is the best content in Dragon Ball? You got to be sure about that.
Yeah. I try to be sparing with that, and I think you are kind of the same way. But I mean, Dragon Ball Z honestly has some of the best content in Dragon Ball. Period. I figured out mine without the Boo arc, so I'll give my numbers here now too. Because for all of Dragon Ball Z Kai, mine were very similar to yours, Dayton, where I also gave the entirety of Dragon Ball Z Kai an 8 out of 10 because, much like you said, it has its flaws. Kai in particular, there's lots of trouble with the music, some trouble with the animation stuff.
Pacing at the beginning was terrible.
Pacing at the beginning was terrible. Pacing at the end struggles a little bit as well. And as far as the actual content itself, not talking about Kai specifically, the content most of it is great. Boo, even as somebody who likes the Boo arc definitely still struggles in some places. but still overall, Dragon Ball Z and Z Kai, very, very good. And I'd put it up there with some of my favorite anime, period. My average with everything, all of the arcs together, comes out to, I think even with the modified, it comes out to a 6.7. So very close to yours,
Okay.
Dayton.
So the little point differences here and there kind of averaged out. So we were damn close.
Pretty dang close. There were a few that you rated quite a bit lower than I did, even though many of mine were like 1 point less than yours. However, and yeah, mine without the Boo arc, the entirety of the Boo arc, came out to an 8.7. So
Oh my. See, I didn't expect yours to have that swing because you had talked about how you like the Boo stuff, so I kind of expected, like me to be the person who was kind of weird and different on that, but the fact that we're so similar in this.
we were pretty on par. I honestly, it's funny because I think I even actually gave the Boo arc. A lot of them were the ones that I gave 1 point less than what you gave, but I think it's just that there are so many good elements that I like that like stick out that if I could pull it out of the Boo arc and look at it individually, I'd be like, this is great. Great character writing, great story. I love this. But putting it into the Boo arc as a whole, there's a lot in there that drags it down, unfortunately. I think the reason why I like to express that I like a lot about the Boo arc is because so many people like to shit on it and say that it's just bad, like wholesale. And that to me is just not true. I think that there are a lot of elements in there that are really, really good. And there's a lot that are also bad, unfortunately.
I mean, I don't know. I would still rate it above the most of Super. So
yeah,
I mean, it's
absolutely.
It's not the bottom of the barrel. It's not my favorite content. I mean, overall, I think I just kind of rate it as fine. The Boo stuff is fine. There are things that I really like. There are things that I'm not crazy about. I wish the story was a little less convoluted. And I wish they followed through on some of the setup. Like there's a lot of missed opportunity, which I think really hurts it. But it's not terrible. It's not like it's a bad experience. It's not like, gosh, after watching through Super that second time, I don't know if I'll ever go back and watch through all of Super again because it is a slog to get through that. I would love a Kai version of Super, though. That would be actually, we already kind of have that with the movies. Just finish making the movies.
If they made a movie for every saga, I would just watch the movies. Like, I honestly, I don't think I will ever watch the Beerus arc or the Golden Frieza arc from the anime ever again.
You have strictly better versions in the movies that tell the same story, right? Like, why would you watch the anime?
100%. And yeah, they're just, man, they're bad. Those first couple arcs in Super are real bad. I also like I agree with you that I think the Boo arc as a whole is better than almost everything in Super, minus maybe some of the Tournament of Power stuff, and most of that is just because the fights are so cool. I actually also was going back to look at what we gave. Do you remember what you gave the original Dragon Ball as a whole for the rating that you gave it?
Oh gosh, no, I don't remember. Feels like it's been a long time since we finished Dragon Ball, but actually I don't think it was that long ago. We've just consumed a lot of Dragon Ball content since then.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, I think it was our podcast episode 30, so it's probably been close to a year at this point. But I've got it in my notes here. I think I gave the original Dragon Ball a 7 out of 10, and you gave it an 8 out of 10. So you basically rated it on par with Dragon Ball Z. I don't know if that was your intent or not, but that was kind of what you ended up doing. I think I ended up rating Z Kai just a little bit, like edging out the original Dragon Ball just ever so slightly.
I mean, my thing is if I take out the Boo stuff, I definitely rate this Dragon Ball content above the original Dragon Ball. But because I have to include the Boo stuff, which for me does drag it down, then yeah, that would make sense. I would put them on par. One thing, gosh, I don't know if we've talked about this on mic or not, but if I had to introduce somebody to the Dragon Ball universe, the
Ooh.
original Dragon Ball is probably the best spot to actually start. Um, because man, I would definitely recommend Kai over the original series at this point. Um,
Yeah.
the original series is just so long. There's so much filler. But at the same time, Kai, if you don't know, if you haven't seen the original, sometimes it can be really hard to follow what the hell is going on. Especially at the beginning when you're moving at such breakneck speeds. So that makes it a hard recommendation. You obviously aren't going to start with Super. Um, I'm regretting suggesting that we should start with GT soon. And then uh I mean, original Dragon Ball is just it's such a nice self-contained journey with concepts that are easy to follow. The pacing on it is it's not perfect. There's definitely arcs that do it better than others in the original Dragon Ball. But overall it's a great story. Um so I like Dragon Ball and I like Dragon Ball Z for very like different reasons. And I don't know, it's weird because it's all in the same universe, right? But they're so different and I really appreciate one for one set of reasons versus the other. And so it's actually kind of hard for me to compare the two.
It's really funny because I am 98% sure that the original manga for Dragon Ball, there was no delineation between what we call the original Dragon Ball in the anime and Dragon Ball Z. It basically was just all one continuous manga. But I agree with you that they feel drastically different, and I think that the anime kind of made that delineation because they are such wildly different stories and types of storytelling. And for me, I love Dragon Ball, and I think that it does some things better than Dragon Ball Z. I prefer the elements that Dragon Ball Z has a little bit more. It feels a little bit more, if you want to say, adult, I guess, but there's a lot more tension. In my opinion, I think that there's a lot more tension with like Namek and the Saiyans and people dying and stuff like that. Not to say that there isn't that in Dragon Ball towards the end as well, but you have it like right off the bat in Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, without the Boo content, I definitely enjoy Z. Like I rank that higher than I do the original Dragon Ball content because I think it's peak Dragon Ball Z. It's what I grew up on, so there's always going to be a bias there, and I'm not even going to try and ignore that bias. I'm going to accept it and just give it bonus points. Um, and I mean, you're right. There is like, I guess like an adult element with Dragon Ball Z that I do very much enjoy, and it makes it. I think it makes it maybe a little bit more entertaining to rewatch over the original Dragon Ball. Because you're kind of going through that journey with Goku growing up, and it's an excellent journey. But man, I love watching people just kick each other's asses for like 150 episodes or whatever. That's freaking great, and I love it. So I think I think Dragon Ball tells a more cohesive story, but Dragon Ball Z is just like it's more entertaining. I don't know how to describe it.
It's actually funny that you say it that way too, because, and I mean, we've talked multiple times about the fact that a lot of people are watching Dragon Ball Z for the fights, and the fighting is its core to Dragon Ball as a whole. But as we were re-watching through Dragon Ball Z in the Kai format, I found myself paying less attention to the fights sometimes and just so much more engaged with the story and the character arcs, which I think was part of the reason why I really enjoyed and appreciated Mr. Satan's story so much more. But not to say that I didn't enjoy the fighting. I absolutely did. It was funny, the difference between watching it as a teenager or a preteen versus watching it as an adult and seeing what I decided to focus on.
I think we were both kind of blown away with actually how decent of a character that Android 16 was.
Yeah, absolutely. He was one that I think neither one of us really appreciated as much as kids, and super well written, super interesting when you actually like dig down into him.
Yeah, he's actually a decent character. It's just one of those things where sometimes when you're a kid and you're watching an adult show, you miss some of the adult themes that are going on. And I feel like that was just one of them where I didn't understand his character. Like, you're not kicking ass. Why are you in this show? Was kind of my teenage view on that character. But now I'm like, no, he's probably one of the best characters in all the Cell stuff.
Yeah, yeah, he might be arguably one of the best characters. Period. Just for I think even the subtle nature of the writing for his character and how poignant he is in like the story for the androids and for Cell and for Gohan, it makes me appreciate him even more.
It's so good. But I mean, to kind of just touch on kind of my major notes with all of Z, I mean, it's like I said earlier, this is peak Dragon Ball for me. It has all the highs that I absolutely love. There's drama, there's stress, there's adult themes, which I mean, I don't think Super tried to replicate original Dragon Ball, but also wanted it to be Dragon Ball Z, and somehow didn't do either. It kind of took like the worst elements from both of them and crammed them together. You have an adult Goku who acts like a child, which is not very entertaining to watch. So I don't know. It's hard for me to put a finger on like why I enjoy Z so much and why I enjoy original Dragon Ball so much and why I like that they're separate things. It's just, I don't know. I like the journey. I like where we're at. Maybe I don't have anything else to gush on about. Maybe I've said my part and now I'm just rambling.
We also have been this podcast episode is going on pretty long. I'm gonna have to let Dayton go to sleep here soon. But so as not to ramble too much, I do want to say a few things. I actually like what you said about Super in it trying to bring in those elements, but it's funny because GT tried to do the same thing and quite literally turned Goku into a child to try and recapture that Dragon Ball magic, and absolutely, in my opinion, fails to do so.
Whoops.
Super basically tries to do it again, but this time basically mentally dumbing Goku down into a child instead of physically doing it, and fails in its own unique, spectacular ways. But Z is special because we already got to watch Goku's journey from child to adult in the original Dragon Ball, and Z is getting to see him becoming a fully functional adult, but also getting to watch Goku's son's journey, Gohan, and getting to see how different Gohan's journey is from Goku's, and how Goku kind of like sought out, teachers and adventure, and Gohan was just kind of thrust into it and kind of had to sink or swim, basically, just kind of figure it out. And that is interesting to me. Getting to see Goku become the mentor, which is something that you brought up, Dayton, which I really, really like. Goku has a million mentors himself and then becomes the mentor in the Buu arc, which, again, one of the elements of the Buu arc that I really enjoy.
I think during the Cell saga, and I don't think we talked about this much, that was probably one of his best displays of being kind of the wise master and the mentor, when he's kind of putting all the pieces together and putting everything in motion and training Gohan, and he's kind of in charge. He's not there to win through his fists. He's there to kind of orchestrate the victory and kind of help people achieve that victory, not just do it himself.
Yes, I very much agree. I feel like that's even, well, I was going to say that's even more on display in Buu until the very end.
He's like, and I orchestrated me winning, and you all should learn from that.
That sounds like something Team 4-Star would basically say in his mouth at the end of that arc. And yeah, that's about right. But I mean, that's why Z to me is so special, is getting to see Goku's journey into adulthood, Gohan's journey into I mean, from childhood to kind of into adulthood as well. And then, of course, getting to see characters like Vegeta's story arc from villain to hero, effectively, and then Mr. Satan's story from I don't even know what to call him, from this person who steals the glory to the person who actually deserves the accolades that he has then stolen.
I mean, it's funny because he's kind of a slime ball. He's kind of a do anything to get the glory sort of thing. But it's weird because he's kind of been an imposter his in some elements his whole life, and then he actually achieves it here. So I don't know. There's something fulfilling about it.
It is very fulfilling. It's one of the reasons I like his story so much in the Boo arc. But yeah, there's great writing here. There are some elements that are a little bit rough around the edges, especially in Boo, and of course Kai's pacing struggles here and there. I think Kai, like you said, Dayton, Kai is probably, I hate to say it, but I would probably recommend it over the original Z, even though the music drives me fucking nuts. But
there's got to be a version out there where someone just put the Faulkner scores back in.
I would love that so much. But yeah, it's I think it's a better experience than having to sit through all that filler in the original. Maybe watching the original and skipping the filler, but even then there are other issues with it. So yeah,
we're still looking for that perfect rendition, right?
We'll get it one day. Maybe one day they'll just do a full remake of Dragon Ball Z, and it'll be like 100 episodes, and it'll end with the Cell arc or something.
Oh, come on. Don't tease me like that.
But I'm rambling at this point. We're getting damn near close to the 3-hour mark.
Ooh,
for
is
our
this a new
recording.
record for us? Look at us go.
It's getting fucking close. So is there anything else that you wanted to talk about, Dayton?
Hell no. I need to go to frickin' bed.
On that note, that's it for this episode of Instant Transmission, where we discuss everything Dragon Ball. This has been your host, Todd.
And Dayton.
Don't forget, we're on Patreon and Twitter. If you want to help the podcast ascend to its final form, you can find us at patreon.com/ITDBpodcast and over on Twitter at x.com/ITDBpodcast. And speaking of ratings, please like, review, and subscribe on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to us on. Thank you all so much for your support.
God damn, you sound like you know what you're doing.
I have no idea. But be sure to join us next time as we do something we definitely, absolutely, most certainly have decided on.
Dude, I can't wait.
Might we be embarking on a grand tour? Will we be exploring a zone of the dead? Is there a team with a 4-star ball in our future? Find out next time. And to all our fellow Dragon Ball fans, stay safe out there, and remember to keep rocking the dragon.
So if you scroll up to the top page of our notes, at the bottom of it, it says intro, say hello.
Hello!
We did it. Man, this fucking shit's easy.